We are observing you crossing the 260 of Lima at 31 miles west. Level is 10,700, velocity...
October 1996. A state-of-the-art passenger jet careens out of control for 30 horrific minutes, then crashes into the Pacific Ocean.
I've got it! I've got it!
Climb AeroPeru 603.
We're gonna turn over!
What could have brought down AeroPeru Flight 603? The answer to the mystery may be found in the aircraft's black box flight recorder, a puzzle which investigators must solve. The story they uncover is how a simple human error set off a chain of events that ended in tragedy.
2 cents of American money brought down a $75 million aircraft and killed 70 people.
This kind of a problem that they faced that night was probably one of 10 over the last 20 or 30 years.
You never lose hope immediately. You know, it takes time for you to get to that point that you will accept the fact that there's no people that got out of their life.
We're gonna turn over!
Lima, Peru. Jorge Chavez International Airport. AeroPeru Flight 603 prepared for takeoff to Santiago, Chile. The plane was a 4-year-old Boeing 757, a state-of-the-art passenger jet known for its reliability and safety. AeroPeru 603 was flown by 2 of the national airline's best pilots, Captain Eric Schreiber, 58, and First Officer David Fernandez, 42. "61 passengers and 9 crew members were aboard. Most were Chileans on their way home. Others were Peruvian, British, Italian, Spanish, 1 New Zealander, and other Latin Americans. Among them, the brother-in-law and close friend of Mexico businessman, Monas Albert.
Our companies do business in South America. We export, and every so often we will go to see our clients. And on this trip, Kenny and Abraham went to see some clients in Peru and in Chile. I had a very good relationship with both of them. With my brother-in-law, of course, we were like brothers. I love the guy. He married my only sister, so we had a great relationship.
Checklists complete. First Officer Fernandez hailed the tower.
Lima Tower, AeroPeru 603, runway 15, ready for takeoff.
AeroPeru 603, use noise abatement.
Wind calm, ready for takeoff on runway 15.
1515, transponder.
Flaps 15, takeoff briefing complete.
The captain makes a joke about their precision.
See how accurate we are? Not even Swiss. Rolling.
The AeroPeru 757 was among a new generation of computer-controlled aircraft in which pilots are trained to rely on a central data system designed to reduce errors, both mechanical and human. On takeoff, the 757 performed perfectly.
80 knots.
Check.
V1, rotate. V2.
Gear up.
right.
Within moments, the pilots received a highly unusual reading.
V2+10.
The altimeters are stuck.
The altimeter indicates the height of the aircraft off the ground. It read 0, though they were obviously flying.
The altimeters have stuck.
Yeah,
All of them.
this is really new. Keep V2+10.
The 757 is equipped with 3 altimeters, one for pilot, one for co-pilot, one backup. All 3 were dead. Then they lost another crucial instrument, the airspeed indicator.
The speed.
Eh?
The speed.
What's going on? We're not climbing.
No, I am climbing, but the speed.
Hold it. Maintain speed.
AeroPeru 603 left the lights of Lima, out towards the Pacific Ocean. With no airspeed or altitude instruments, the pilots were now flying blind. The air traffic controller in Lima maintained contact with the plane, noting its altitude and course. He did not hear when the pilots got a new minor warning that they must adjust the rudder, which steers the aircraft left and right.
603. We are descending.
Rudder ratio.
That's strange. Turn to the right.
Alan McLeod is a veteran Air Canada pilot.
They got a rudder ratio warning, which consists of an amber light that would come flashing on there with a little beeping horn and a message on this engine crew alerting system saying rudder ratio. That's just a system that reduces the amount of rudder the airplane has that can be used as the airplane accelerates and goes faster and faster. Because it was sensing wrong or improper information, it sensed a fault, so it gave a warning to the crew.
The erratic warnings were being generated by the plane's central computer, but the pilots could not understand why. Then, the dead altimeters sprung to life.
Climb, 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 climb.
I am.
Climb. You're going down, David.
I am up, but the speed.
Yeah, but it's stuck. Mach trim, rudder ratio. Climb, 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 climb. Set heading 100. Well, now you're... It's okay on this heading.
Set the climb thrust. Center autopilot in command.
Just as suddenly, the altitude readings returned to normal. The moment of calm would be brief. Just 1 minute after takeoff, Captain Schreiber attempted to engage the autopilot to give them time to think.
There is no command.
The autopilot requires identical data from 2 of the aircraft's 3 flight control computers. But Schreiber's instrument readings were so different from those of Fernandez, the autopilot disengaged. Then another alert.
Mach trim, Mach trim.
Mach trim indicates that the plane is not flying in a level position, yet the 757 seemed to be flying normally.
Let's go to basic instruments. Everything's going to hell.
Mach speed trim is a system that trims the airplane. It changes the angle of the horizontal stabilizer in the back end of the airplane, and that has to be changed as the airplane accelerates to a higher speed. It was getting false indications, so they got a warning that they had an overspeed, which of course they didn't. That warning would consist of, again, the master caution and a master warning, which is a red light associated with an oral warning as well.
Despite confusing warnings and no autopilot, the aircraft was controllable. If necessary, Schreiber could have kept the plane aloft for hours. But he decided to land. He instructed his first officer to declare an emergency.
We are in an emergency.
AeroPeru 603, Lima.
We are declaring an emergency.
We have no basic instruments, no altimeter, no airspeed indicator. Declaring emergency.
Receive. Altitude?
We don't have. We're up to 1,000 feet, approximately 1,700.
603.
Confirm if possible if you can change your frequency to 119.7 to make sure you can receive radar instructions.
Just 40 miles from Lima, the pilots of AeroPeru 603 now made their first attempt at an emergency landing. Puzzled by their problems, they began to suspect that the AeroPeru ground crew had tampered with the aircraft.
We changed to 119.7.
Auto throttle. Disconnected by itself.
It's in maintenance, move everything.
What have they done? I'll take the controls now.
Okay, you have control.
The pilots did not know that their suspicions were close to the truth. But there was no time to speculate further.
Lima, 603.
AeroPeru
603, Lima.
We request vectors for ILS.
Runway 15.
They sought the runway with the help of a guidance transmitter called the Instrument Landing System, or ILS. The ILS provides information on their course, while altitude information comes from the aircraft's transponder.
Affirmative. Maintain present altitude.
What level do we have? We have 4,000 feet. Can you confirm for us?
Correct. Maintain 4,000.
Schreiber and Fernandez had never experienced nor been trained for this emergency.
Auto throttle disconnect.
Really, we don't have any control.
We don't have any control, not even the basics.
Let's see. Check everything.
The airplane was controllable, but you first have to diagnose what's wrong. And it's very easy from 20/20 hindsight, sitting here in a chair on a nice sunny day, to say, this is what he should have done. But in the cold, dark night with bells and whistles going off, it's very difficult to analyze conflicting information that you're getting. This kind of a problem that they faced that night was probably one of 10 over the last 20 or 30 years that has been similar to this.
Over the dark Pacific Ocean, the pilots could not determine altitude nor speed by sight. They requested that the tower help guide them in.
Responding.
Airspeed is 0. All speeds. Right. Can you give us the airspeed, please, if you have us on the radar?
Yes, affirmative. As of 10 seconds,
It seems that you're climbing at level 6,000 at 22 miles south on heading 195.
The air traffic controller's computers calculated a correct airspeed by measuring the plane's movement over the ground.
Okay, we have that. We are on heading 190, and we have
7,000 feet on the altimeter.
Yes, correct. You are now reaching 7,000.
But neither the pilots nor the air traffic controller knew that the altitude indicated on the scope was incorrect. It was coming from the plane's erratic computer.
The traffic controller would try to help the pilot, but he was receiving the wrong information on altitude. He was receiving a wrong indication from the captain's altimeter.
The reason the air traffic control system was transmitting improper altitude readout information to the airplane was because the airplane's altimeter, through the air data computer, would send the indicated altitude that the airplane was experiencing down to the radar unit, and of course it was incorrect, and they would read it off their readout down in the air traffic control center and transmit it back to the pilots, and of course it was incorrect because they were getting incorrect information to begin with.
Investigators would later discover that AeroPeru 603 was drifting downward, while the altimeters showed them at a near constant 10,000 feet. The passengers were as yet unaware of the drama unfolding in the cockpit.
Avoid large or abrupt radar inputs. If normal left hydraulic system pressure available, left
Now Captain
hydraulic
Schreiber
system
ordered Fernandez
available.
to scan the flight
Yes,
manual
crosswind,
for some
do not attempt
explanation of the
auto land.
warnings.
Says left hydraulic system available. Yes, crosswind, do not attempt an auto land.
In Lima, the air traffic controller continued to guide AeroPeru 603 back to the ground.
AeroPeru 603, we are observing you now at level 9,200. What is your heading now?
We're heading level 205.
Affirmative.
You are turning slowly to the right, correct?
No, we are maintaining course to stay away from the coast.
With incorrect altitude information being transmitted from the aircraft to the tower, they did not realize that the plane was descending.
Your distance is 30 miles. Do you want a heading to proceed to the localizer, correct?
Correct.
We're going to suggest course north 360.
360. We have problems here reading the instruments. You're going to have to help me with altitudes and airspeeds.
If it is possible.
Okay, received.
Let's go. The approach is set.
The 757's computer sent critical warnings, information that the pilots were trained to obey, but could not trust.
Let's try to make a descent on this heading.
It's climbing.
The airspeed plummeted to below stall speed, and then raced up again.
Let's go down to 10,000 feet. Why does the speed go away so fast? Could it be the real speed?
That's what worries me. No, I don't think so. Can you verify our speed, please?
320 is indicated.
We have 350, but
The
no...
engines are on idle, but we keep accelerating and accelerating.
Okay, received.
Nerves were now stretched tight.
You can imagine the pilots, they're flying there. They don't have a true indication of the speed. They're obviously trying to fly the airplane and changing the attitude up and down. That in itself will change an indication of airspeed, although it was incorrect.
Both pilots were really confused. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to act. And they did unhuman efforts to save the aircraft. But, I mean, they were really tired and of all the work and all the confusion and all the alarms.
Fernandez suggested that they try the speed brakes, used to rapidly slow the aircraft.
Extend the speed brakes.
For a moment, it appeared to be working. Then, another warning.
All three indicators are fine on speed, fine on overspeed.
Overspeed means the plane is flying too fast. The pilots didn't believe it. But if it was right, the 757 could be torn apart. They were forced to make a decision, to speed up or slow down. If they got it wrong, 70 people would die. "15 minutes had passed since takeoff. Then the computerized brain of AeroPeru 603 sent another burst of contradictory warnings.
Rudder ratio.
Can't be, nothing's disconnecting.
All engine instruments are okay.
What can our real speed be?
The speed indications
Lima
are okay.
Tower provided their only chance of survival.
We are observing you crossing the 260 of Lima at 31 miles west. Level is 10,700. Velocity is approximately 280
over the ground.
Perfect.
The controller's altitude reading was incorrect. Junk information being generated by the 757's computers and radioed to the tower.
Overspeed.
The brakes were on, but now
That's
another
speed brakes.
overspeed warning. Then the stall warning sounded.
Let's descend.
Can't be over speed. We're still flying.
They get a stall warning that the airplane is falling out of the sky. At the same time, they got overspeed warning. Impossible to have two contradictory alarms. Either you're stalling or either you're having an overspeed. So that created more confusion. Really, this problem has never happened before. It was a new emergency.
In aviation, you always figure, what's going to kill me? What is the critical thing? Let's take care of that first. and then we'll take care of the other lesser issues later on. When you get a stall warning or when you get an overspeed indication, you need to pay attention to those immediately. In this case, they were getting both a stall warning and an overspeed. Well, which is right?
First Officer David Fernandez finally realized that the odds were against a safe landing.
We request, is there any plane that can take off and rescue us?
Acknowledged. Rescue has been alerted.
Any plane in the area to guide us?
An AeroPeru that may be in the area. Anybody?
No, don't say anything like that.
Yes, because right now we are in a stall.
The stick shaker vibrated violently, indicating that the 757 was going too slow and could fall from the sky.
AeroPeru 603. We have a 707 that is leaving for Puruel. We will advise him.
We are not in a stall. It's a false alarm.
Schreiber's airspeed indicator read 350 knots, well above stall speed.
No, we have stick shaker. It has to be.
But even with speed brakes and everything, we're maintaining 9,500 feet. Why aren't we getting the same reading?
When the airplane is slowed up to a point in the air that it can no longer sustain itself in flight, it stalls. The wing stalls or stops flying. There's a warning system built into the airplane that tells the pilots when that's happening. It's known as a stick shaker, along with a voice warning, which we just heard. When the stick shaker goes off because the airplane is slowed down too much, you get a warning like this, where the control column is shaking and vibrating, along with the voice warning saying that the airplane is stalling. And of course, the pilots would go into the aircraft stall recovery procedure at that point.
In the battle between man and machine, the deranged 757 was winning. The pilots now had no sense of where they were or how high. They had gradually been descending and were now just 1,000 feet over the sea. Lima Tower, misguided by AeroPeru 603's incorrect transponder, reassured the pilots that they were at 10,000 feet.
AeroPeru 603, you are now flying on course 120. We observe you to be at level 10,000. Your speed is approximately 220 and a distance from Lima of 33 miles to the northwest. The 707 will be ready in 15 minutes to fly west to help you.
The pilots had to abandon their attempt at landing. The best hope now was that another aircraft could get airborne and guide the 757 back to the airport.
To have another aircraft come alongside and formate, or you formate on it, would have been one way of recovering from this abnormal situation. However, we must remember that the flight was at night and darkness. The pilots may or may not have had any formation flying training, but that would have been one way to resolve the problem quite well, actually.
Terrain. Too low. Terrain.
What's happening?
Too low to
Now the pilots received the most terrifying warning of all. It is called the ground proximity alarm, meaning a collision with the Earth is imminent. Still, the tower told them they were at 10,000 feet.
West course of 300.
We have the terrain alarm and we're supposed to be at 10,000 feet?
According to the monitor, you have 105.
Too low. Terrain. Too low. Terrain.
There is no checklist for if you have these 7 or 8 warnings going off, which they did, and they couldn't shut them off. It's a very rattling experience. I could play that tape for you, and you hear those things: whoop whoop, pull up, terrain, terrain, and all of these things going off, and the stick shaker. Brrr. It's a very unnerving environment.
All the computers are going crazy here.
Schreiber turned the aircraft toward the sea, away from a possible collision with a mountain or skyscraper.
Too low. Terrain. Too low. Terrain.
Despite the erroneous warnings, the terrain alarm was correct.
There's a system on board the aircraft called the ground proximity warning system, and it senses a rate of descent in the airplane. The irony of the situation was they were getting warnings from that saying too low, terrain, terrain, too low. That probably, in all probability, was a true warning. But because they'd been subjected to so many warnings and ongoing false warnings, horns, bells, and whistles, that they didn't really, I don't think, react to that too seriously.
The air traffic controller noted AeroPeru's new course, away from Lima.
AeroPeru 603.
We observe you initiating a left turn to the west.
I don't understand you.
We observe you turning to the left, circling to the west.
Affirmative, we are heading 250, but we are going out towards sea because of the low terrain alarm.
The tower confirmed that the 757 had turned away from the airport, out toward the open Pacific.
Yes, affirmative. We observe you 42 miles, flying to the west, course 250.
We are over water, aren't we?
Affirmative. Over the water.
You are 42 miles to the west.
Now in darkness and heavy haze, the pilots had another problem with their speed.
Are we going down now?
We have 370 knots. Are we descending now?
We are showing the same speed. You have 200 knots
Speed approximately.
Speed 200 knots.
220 ground speed, reducing speed slightly.
The pilots were stunned. 200 knots was precariously close to a stall speed.
Damn, we're gonna stall right now.
Let's go up. Let's see. Let's go up here.
The two men struggled with the deadly situation. A computer that warns them of flying too fast, too slow, and too low all at once. Schreiber now decided to risk a second attempt at landing, seeking the signal known as the ILS to guide the aircraft to the runway.
I want to try to intercept the ILS. I'm trying to descend.
Lima, AeroPeru 603. We will try to intercept the ILS. Let us know if we are in.
Received, AeroPeru 603.
You show now level 9700.
The instruments seemed to be working. For a moment, there was a glimmer of hope.
This one's right.
This one's okay, too.
The air traffic controller attempted to raise the pilot's spirits with good news.
Stand by to verify speed. The 707 is about to take off. It is on taxi.
Confirm our speed.
It is very important we do not have any speed indications on board.
Understood. You're starting to turn and we observe your
Ground speed at 270.
Stay there, Eric. 270 is okay.
They now knew their speed, but altitude remained fatally wrong.
altitude is 9,700. Your speed is
140 knots, ground speed on the monitor.
How can we be flying at this speed if we're descending with engines on idle?
Give me the altitude, please.
Yes, you are maintaining 9,700 according to the scope, sir.
9,700?
Yes, correct.
What is your indicated altitude? Do you have any visual reference?
9,700, but it is indicating too low terrain. Are you sure you have us on the radar at 50 miles?
Hey, look, with 370, we have
370 what? Do we lower gear?
AeroPeru 603, Lima.
What do we do with the gear?
Suddenly, they realized the awful truth.
We're hitting water! Pull it up!
Climb AeroPeru 603. If you need to, pull up.
For 20 seconds, the pilots struggled for altitude.
I've got it! I've got it! We're gonna turn over!
AeroPeru 603, Lima. AeroPeru 603, Lima.
The next morning, Mexico businessman Monas Albert learned that an AeroPeru flight had crashed.
5 minutes after takeoff, the crew informed the tower that they were having an emergency and they requested clearance to return to Lima. During the process, contact with the aircraft was lost at 0110, with the latest position of the aircraft being 50 miles north of the city of Lima.
About 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up and turned on the news channel, and I heard there was a crash, an airplane crash of AeroPeru, but the news mentioned New York to Lima.
Rescue operations are underway by authorities. The aircraft was carrying 61 passengers and 9 crew members.
His brother-in-law and his business partner were on AeroPeru 603.
So I went to the shower and didn't pay a lot of attention. But when I came out, they corrected the news and they said from Lima to Santiago. And I knew in that plane, Kenny and Abraham were flying. The news was very vague, so they mentioned there might be some survivors, and they mentioned that the plane crashed on the Pacific Ocean, and they didn't have a lot of news, and the crash was at night. So in my mind, I thought that the plane sort of landed on water and most people got out.
Guido Fernandez had just been appointed Peru's accident investigator. AeroPeru was his first case. The co-pilot, David Fernandez, was his nephew.
I was in bed. It was about 4:30 in the morning, and they called me. Your nephew is lost in an airplane. They asked me, how do you feel that your nephew was a co-pilot? My gosh, I feel very bad, but I'm a professional. I have to do a job. I have to comply and complete my duty. So that's what I did.
Fernandez rushed to the crash site in a Navy helicopter. It was clear there were no survivors. 9 bodies were floating in the debris. The rest sank with the 757. Fernandez met with the air traffic controller at Lima Tower. His account was baffling.
Well, the controller really didn't know. He was just trying to help. So he did all he could to help him. But unfortunately, for him, it was a new emergency too.
Fernandez put thoughts of his nephew out of his mind. His job was to retrieve the aircraft's flight data and voice recorders to determine what happened. He needed help. Fernandez contacted the National Transportation Safety Board in Washington, D.C., the world's leading agency for air accident investigation.
They had found the aircraft. It was pretty well documented by radar. The Navy, the Peruvian Navy, had gotten a fix on the flotsam and the wreckage in the ocean. And the only thing left to do was find it on the bottom of the ocean, which they did not have the facilities for.
Rodriguez flew to Lima to join Guido Fernandez's effort to find answers.
I found out that his nephew was the first officer. I suggested that perhaps they should consider removing Captain Fernandez from the investigation because of emotional involvement and what have you.
The American investigator's concerns soon vanished.
He was very objective, I would say an excellent investigator, considering that it was, and not a distant nephew, it was his very close relative. He did an outstanding job.
The black box in the Boeing 757 can emit a locator beacon for 30 days before batteries run dead. The US Navy provided underwater remote-operated vehicles to survey the debris field, seeking the black boxes. The wreckage confirmed that the plane went down in one piece.
I've done in-flight breakups that were spread over 15, 16 miles and maybe a mile and a half wide, which tells you instantly that just what you know of looking at the wreckage, that this thing didn't hit in one piece. It clearly was disintegrating as it was crashing. But in this case, it was a fairly tight debris field, and so obviously it hit at high speed and was fairly closely knit wreckage pattern.
The data recorders were retrieved from the 757. Brought to the surface, the boxes were placed in coolers full of fresh water to keep them from oxidizing. They were taken back to Washington for analysis at the NTSB. The cockpit recorder could offer the evidence investigators sought. Every word spoken by pilots Schreiber and Fernandez, and every unnerving alarm, was recorded on audio tape. The recorded voices were faint, sometimes hard to make out, but the chaos in the cockpit rang through with chilling clarity. The tape was digitized into a computer, filtered and enhanced. Now investigators had the clue they'd been looking for.
It was clear to us that they were really experiencing a problem with airspeed and altitude. And the airspeed and altitude indications in the aircraft are strictly a function of what we call the pitot system.
The pitot system is found on all aircraft, large or small. External ports measure outside air pressure to provide data on altitude and speed. If these ports are blocked, the plane's computers receive false data and generate false warnings. But why these ports would be blocked was a mystery. Robotic vehicles searched for the missing piece of the puzzle. What they found stunned investigators. Captain Schreiber's static port was completely blocked with tape. Investigators now learned what happened. Just before AeroPeru 603 lifted off from Lima, maintenance workers cleaned the aircraft. A worker covered the static ports with tape to protect them. This is standard procedure. But he forgot to remove the tape. It was a small oversight with catastrophic results.
The taping was never removed. And when the airplane departed and started to fly, nothing but trapped static sea level air pressure was sensed by those instruments. And in matter of fact, the airplane was climbing up in thinner air. And the information presented on the instruments and to the air data computer was false, which generated just totally non-normal readings.
The inspector who was supposed to quality check his work did not do it. And the supervisor out on the line that night was not there, he was sick, and there was a regular mechanic who was filling that role. He did not see it. And the captain or the pilot, in this case the captain did the pre-flight. They do a walk around looking for just that kind of thing. The captain did the pre-flight that night and he did not detect it either.
A little piece of paper with glue caused an accident. But the paper and the glue are not to blame. Humans are to blame because humans use that tape in the wrong place for the wrong purpose.
Another accident, shockingly similar to AeroPeru 603, had happened just 8 months earlier to another 757. In February 1996, 189 people died when a German charter called Bergenair crashed 5 miles after takeoff from Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic. The NTSB assisted in the investigation. A survey of the wreckage revealed that one pitot tube, the other critical part of the pitot system, was blocked. As with AeroPeru 603, night was the pilot's worst enemy. The Bergenair pilot flipped the plane upside down before crashing into the sea.
Bergenair accident clearly pointed out already that a crew will get confused by these cryptic advisories, rudder ratio, mark airspeed trim, and not getting a clear indication what the underlying problem is, which is a problem with the air data computer or anything which comes behind it, the pitot tube or the static port. These were facts which were well known to the manufacturer, and so it happened again.
3 months after the Bergenair crash, bulletins were issued to all airline carriers about the pitostatic problems. But AeroPeru had not yet implemented the changes.
The bulletins and the, let's call it the fruits of the Dominican Republic investigation of Bergenair had not yet reached AeroPeru at the time this accident occurred. The Peruvian government very correctly made a point of that in their report on the accident, saying that they should have given more impetus to those recommendations to get them out to the industry quicker.
Well, it's very unfortunate, but it comes back to the fact that communication in aviation is sometimes deficient. There is not that high level of exchange of information between different operators, as they're all competitors. They do not exchange certain information, and specifically not the one which is safety related. And that's definitely the case in the AeroPeru accident.
9,700, but it is indicating too low terrain.
Even if Schreiber and Fernandez had known about Bergenair, it may not have helped them survive, given the high pressure of their situation.
We lowered gear.
It's easy to sit here in the 757 cockpit and play the Monday morning quarterback. Having heard the bells and the overspeed warnings, the ground proximity warning, the stall warning, it's very easy to do that and sit here and say what I would have done being an experienced pilot. But to put yourself into the position of those two pilots that night, they were in an extremely difficult situation to fly that airplane and recover from that experience.
2 weeks after the crash, Monas Albert joined dozens of grieving families, seeking the remains of his brother-in-law and friend. He finally identified them in a Lima morgue.
I wanted to find them. I really wanted to find them. And one part of me didn't want to find them because there was this fantasy that if I don't find them, maybe they're in an island with a drink and looking at some girls dancing. I can close the chapter. I can go and take him and have him buried, and there'll be a place for the family to go and put some flowers once in a while and say, okay, my brother-in-law's here, or my dad is here, or my husband is here.
Now that investigators had the answer to the mysterious loss of AeroPeru 603, the lawsuits began. In November 1996, a Miami lawyer took on the case on behalf of 41 passengers and crew, arguing that the manufacturer, Boeing, was liable for the accident.
Boeing has to foresee the misuse of their product. In other words, the manufacturer of a product is legally liable for the foreseeable misuse of their product, if it can be corrected. In other words, Boeing builds the airplane with a potential hazard in it. That hazard is that in order to clean the airplane, you have to cover the static port. And if you don't take it off, the airplane can crash.
I wanted them back. And since I couldn't get them back, at least I wanted the wives of the victims to get compensated. How much is that worth? I don't know. I didn't know. Abraham had 3 daughters, and now they don't have a father. So what is the compensation? The best compensation, if can be done, is get them back. Give them life back again. But because that is not possible, then the other possibility is to get a monetary compensation. And then you fight for the best compensation you can get.
Boeing argued that AeroPeru was at fault, not its 757. An AeroPeru worker taped the static port, which is marked with clear warnings. Boeing also blamed Captain Eric Schreiber. It was his job to visually inspect the aircraft before taking off. But investigator Richard Rodriguez can understand how Schreiber overlooked the tape on the static port.
One of the reasons is it's very high. It's about maybe 15, 17 feet up in the air. And at night with the flashlight, and this happened to be duct tape, which you're not supposed to use. They specify the tape, and it was duct tape, which is silver. So it would not distinguish itself against the background of the fuselage of the aircraft. So basically 3 or 4 people failed to detect the tape on the aircraft prior to departure.
As the search for blame continued, the worker who taped the ports was jailed for his negligence.
Lawyers, you know, sometimes they confuse matters, and they send a guy and ask people questions and ask questions, and the one that stuck the tape was the painter, was the lowest cultured and the one that knew less about what could happen. And the judge resolved that he was the one responsible, and he was in jail.
So that you don't lose the airplane because a maintenance man making $2 an hour down in Peru makes a mistake. It's foreseeable that that kind of a person is going to make a mistake. That's human nature, they're going to make a mistake. And you build your system so you don't lose your $50 million airplane because a maintenance guy makes a simple mistake.
Schreiber and Fernandez were also scrutinized. Veteran pilot Alan McLeod believes that in their situation, he would not have attempted to land. He would have continued to fly for as long as he could, with the plane angled upward slightly and the speed set just above cruise.
Experience has shown that if you don't fly the airplane when you're experiencing an abnormal situation, and they certainly were, you must fly the airplane. Just concentrate on flying the airplane and get the airplane under control, first and foremost.
Are we going down now?
We have 370 knots.
If you don't do that, the airplane's going to bite you, and you're going to end up in more serious situations. So I would fly the airplane, make sure I was able to fly it safely, if only by using the attitude direction indicator and normal power settings that I was familiar with, and then eventually work my way back and get it on the ground.
Pilots call it flying by numbers, relying not on computers, but on basic aviation and human instinct.
It always becomes a problem when pilots are reduced to be push-buttonists. The man-machine interface has to work, and has to work as humans are to operate these airplanes. They have to be designed appropriately for the use of a human being. Of course, you can put in all digits and numbers and computer gimmicks, and you can, but still it's man who has to operate and survey it. And I believe a human being should be in charge.
In 1999, Boeing and AeroPeru decided to settle the lawsuits out of court. Families and loved ones received an exceptional settlement, averaging $1 million US per victim. The damages were high because of the terrible way the passengers and crew on AeroPeru died.
We were able to show that a lot of the people were alive. In a crash like this, a lot of the people would survive the crash and then died of drowning. There was no question in our minds that the people suffered terrible, terrible terror and pain when this happened to them. They were horrified. They were awake. They knew what happened.
The disaster helped sink AeroPeru. Combined with increased competition and rising debt, the national airline went bankrupt in 1999. Boeing increased training on pitot-static problems and issued new regulations about unapproved static port covers. Since 1996, there has not been another pitot-static failure like the one on AeroPeru 603.
The designers of these products and the manufacturers of the products know that they have to take safety into account. They have to, of course, they do that because they know it's the right thing to do. but they also know that if they don't do it, there's going to be somebody watching them that's going to investigate it, that's going to find out why it happened, and that they're going to be accountable for what they do wrong. And that if they don't take into consideration safety, they're going to have to pay for it.
Well, the accidents made the aviation industry aware that something simple like a pitot tube or a static port can cause a major incident or even an accident. And even airline pilots were reminded that this is a vital basic thing and it may happen, and this is the way how to prevent it to turn into a catastrophe.
The case was settled, the industry repented, and moved on. Such is the world of commercial aviation. But it was little consolation for those whose lives were scarred forever by an insignificant piece of tape.
It's suddenly, you say that guy doesn't exist anymore. It's very hard to swallow that. It's very hard to understand. And it took me a long time to accept. So the memory is still there, and it will be there for a long time. I'm not gonna let go. I don't wanna let go.
Avianka Flight 52 is in trouble. The crew is exhausted. They're over New York City and almost out of fuel.
Are we cleared to land now?
Yes, sir, we are cleared to land.
Tell me things louder because I'm not hearing it.
They're cleared to land. Soon the nightmare will be over.
Gear down.
Glide slow! Losing grade 500 feet.
The captain desperately searches for the runway at Kennedy Airport.
Lights!
But he can't find it.
The runway, where is it?
I don't see it. I don't see it.
Now they're battling violent wind shear.
This is the wind shear.
They're going to crash.
With the landing gear up, landing gear up!
The plane has hardly a drop of fuel left. They cannot land. Flight 52 is about to crash somewhere over New York. How could that happen? Even the world's finest air crash detectives will never agree about who is to blame.
Relevance of testimony.
Southwest of Kennedy Airport, with a track brought up. What's motivation?
January the 25th, 1990. Air traffic controllers have been nervously tracking a massive low-pressure system approaching the northeast coast of America.
There was a system moving through the Great Lakes, moving east. There was a couple other systems converging. And a lot of times they'll converge in the New York area there, and the whole northeast will go down.
The weather is already near the safe minimum to land a plane. Flights will have to be cancelled or delayed. The terminals will be choked with thousands of angry passengers. Despite the terrible weather, the air traffic managers in Washington, D.C. order controllers at Kennedy Airport in New York to set a high landing rate. Air travel is vital, and they're under tremendous pressure to delay or cancel as few flights as possible.
There's pressure because that's the business they're in. The business is moving passengers from A to B. That's what the airlines are paid, and the controllers are paid to help that work.
Management in Washington, D.C. is pressuring New York to take on more flights than they feel is safe. Despite the weather, they want them to land 33 aircraft per hour.
We don't like it. We're going to have the worst possible conditions for landing aircraft at Kennedy Airport. We can't use runway 13.
We have to use runway 22 because of the conflicts with other airports.
And because of the winds, we don't like the rate of 33 an hour.
33 is it, and you'll take it.
Scores of overseas flights with thousands of passengers are already on their way. They have to land somehow.
What are we going to do with foreign traffic?
We'll just give them airborne holes.
Well, we know we're going to have wind shear and missed approaches, and this is going to be a very bad day.
I've got very bad vibes about this day.
No. 33. You'll shake it.
And that set the scenario at about 7 or 8 in the morning before we left Medellin. At 7 or 8 in the morning, the scenario was set for this accident to happen.
But within the next few hours, fog and low clouds have closed the main runway at JFK. Now, whatever their bosses say, the controllers won't be able to land 33 aircraft an hour. "2,400 miles to the south in Colombia, it's a warm, sunny day with not a cloud in the sky. Avianka Flight 52 is now boarding passengers for New York. Among them, Miriam and Luis Montoya and their 2 young daughters.
I remember during that day in the morning, before we boarded the flight, I talked to a friend that was going to pick us up at the airport in New York. He told us the weather conditions were bad. The temperature was very low, and it was rainy, and it was going to be foggy.
After a short business trip, Nestor Zarata is traveling home to New York.
I received a telephone call telling me that if I could be in the airport in a half an hour and not ask any questions or request anything, I would get on the direct flight to New York.
In the cockpit, flight engineer Matthias Moyano monitors the loading of over 13,000 pounds of fuel, making a total of 80,000 pounds. Enough for the journey, plus an extra 2 hours flying time.
Avianka 052 Heavy, request clearance for takeoff, runway 11.
Just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Avianka 52 takes off from Medellin with its maximum allowable fuel load. The Colombian airliner heads north for the United States with 158 passengers and crew. By early evening, deteriorating weather has made flight operations at JFK appalling.
Continue to the left, heading 230 vectors and holding for Cameron again.
With no way of turning back the overseas flights, aircraft are forced to circle round endlessly, waiting to land.
Turn left. There is a wind shear alert on final at 1,500 feet. Turn left.
Controllers work frantically to keep track of the growing number of aircraft now in the skies over New York.
251, you are clear to land.
When Mother Nature gets involved, problems develop. The tension gets higher, the pressure gets higher, decisions become more critical.
At JFK, any idea how long those delays are going to be?
I talked to someone else over there, no idea.
I'm holding over here. Delay's indefinite due to the weather. The traffic's missing the approaches. They're going around. I just can't give you a good answer. Your guess would be as good as mine. That's the best I can tell you.
JFK Airport in New York now only has one runway for landing, and aircraft are queuing up to use it. In the near blackout conditions, several planes have to abort their landings, which only adds to the delays. On Flight 52, they know none of this. The crew neither receives nor requests the weather for New York or for their alternate airport, Boston.
In this case, Avianka 52 had the capability of calling several different stations or could have called their own dispatch operation in Miami and got an update on the weather. We don't really have any evidence that they checked with anyone to get the updated weather for JFK and their alternate Boston.
It's inconceivable to me that someone with a responsibility of other people's lives would fly into a deteriorating condition without checking about, hey, do we have a way out of this place?
Avianka 52 enters the airspace near Norfolk, Virginia. After 4 hours in the air, New York City is now less than 40 minutes away. 51-year-old Captain Laureano Caviedes is a seasoned pilot who's been flying with Avianka for 27 years. But his English is poor. All communications with air traffic control will be handled by the 28-year-old co-pilot, Mauricio Klotz. The third man in the cockpit, flight engineer Matthias Moyano, is experienced, but like co-pilot Klotz, he has only 4 months of flight time in the 707.
They were a highly experienced flight crew who had been into New York several times previously on behalf of Avianka. So they were familiar with the route and the procedures, and highly experienced pilots.
Washington, good evening. Avianka 052 Heavy, flight level 370.
Avianka 052 Heavy, Washington Center, roger. Avianka 052, I'd like you to make a right 360-degree turn. And I need you to get a pencil ready for holding instructions at Norfolk.
Okay, 360-degree right turn at Norfolk, Avianka 052 Heavy.
Avianka 052, you ready to copy your holding instructions?
Go ahead, sir.
All right, Avianka 052, you are cleared to the Norfolk VORTAC. Hold south on 174 with right turns and 20-mile legs.
Flight 52's troubles are about to begin. They're being diverted out over the Atlantic Ocean near Norfolk, Virginia, and placed in a holding pattern. Here, the aircraft will fly an elliptical racetrack pattern while it waits for further instructions from air traffic control. They don't know about the bad weather ahead, but with enough fuel for more than 2 hours of flying, there's no cause for alarm. This area in the northeast corridor of the United States is one of the most congested airspaces in the world. Incoming traffic from overseas is routinely directed through a pipeline of controllers before being cleared to land at one of 3 major airports in the New York area: JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark. Tonight, Avianka 52 will come under the direction of more than 6 controllers, each of whom is trying to get the aircraft now circling over New York safely down on the ground.
We just got off the line. It's indefinite holding at this time.
080. We just had 3 missed approaches on 22, right? We just went below the minimums. We just had 4 misses on 22, right? Which is our primary runway.
The visibility is getting worse, and it's worsening.
All right, how many are you holding? Well, we're still holding the 12 or 13 we had earlier. We're expecting some pretty lengthy delays in another hour, so.
While air traffic controllers try to cope with the increasing backlog of flights, Avianka Flight 52 circles for 19 minutes over the Virginia coast, waiting for permission to continue its journey to New York.
Avianka 052, expedite descent through level 33. Just leave flight level 330 within 3 minutes, please.
Okay, we'll leave 330 within 3 minutes. Avianka 052 Heavy.
The Avianka jet is on its way to New York at last, but they have no idea of the trouble that awaits them. Avianka Flight 52 is on its final approach to New York, unaware that conditions for landing at JFK are barely above the safe limits to land a plane. It's a pitch-black night with heavy mist, rain, and sudden violent winds.
This is Central. I was wondering how your weather was doing up there.
It's pretty bad at this point. We got all sorts of wind shears and missed approaches.
Due to not seeing the runway.
You're still trying on a 30 rate.
Yeah, rather unsuccessfully at this point. The winds are starting to pick up. 20% of the guys attempted approaches went on to miss.
When the Northeast goes down, it goes down. It goes down for a big area. And a lot of quick decisions have to be made. You just can't say, wait a minute, stop. Everyone's en route.
The plane has now almost used up the fuel planned for the journey and will shortly start eating into its reserves. The crew is considering diverting to their alternate airport in Boston, just 210 miles from New York.
Washington Center, Avianka 052 Heavy.
Avianka 052 Heavy, go ahead.
Do you have any information about delays to Boston?
Boston, I'll check that, sir.
Thank you.
The Washington controller asks his assistant to check on the conditions at Boston, but he gets distracted juggling other aircraft and forgets all about Avianka's request. While Flight 52 is left waiting for an answer that never comes, their precious fuel supply is slowly draining away.
Ask him about Boston again.
Did you ask about delays at Boston, or are we going to approach Kennedy?
Okay, Avianka 052, it looks as though New York Center may have to hold you for possibly up to 30 minutes.
You can expect clearance on course, just momentarily, with,
it stands right now, an additional holding of at most 30 minutes. With that in mind, you want to check on an alternate airport? I believe Boston is. I'll check on Boston.
Okay. We're now descending to 190 and expecting information about Boston.
Okay, Avianka 052, I've been advised Boston is open and accepting traffic if you do need that as an alternate airport.
Okay, stand by a minute.
Flight engineer Moyano begins to calculate how much fuel they'll have after an additional 30 minutes of holding. Even before they can respond, Washington Control directs them to another holding location.
Avianka 052 Heavy, make a right turn now to intercept the Cameron 2 arrival. Cleared on course, maintain flight level 190.
Flight 52 is now off the New Jersey coast in an area known as Cameron, less than 45 miles from Kennedy Airport, but it seems as far away as ever.
During all those holding times, I was praying and trying to see where we're going to land. I mean, when we're going to be on the ground. I don't want to be here anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. I apologize for the delay, but it appears we're going to be holding as we wait our turn to land in New York. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened, and we should have you on the ground shortly. Thank you.
There was a point where the captain announced that there was traffic in the New York City area and that we would be on hold for a while and that he would get back to us.
It will be the last communication the crew has with the passengers. Flight 52's situation now goes from bad to worse.
Avianka 052, descend and maintain 14,000.
It's handed over to the New York controllers, who even on a good day can be intimidating. And today is not a good day. There are up to 39 aircraft trying to land and dozens more on the ground waiting to take off.
Avianka 052, expect further clearance at 0139.
Avianka 052 Heavy, roger.
Tired and frustrated, the crew of Avianka 52 continues to circle the crowded airspace over New York while they wait for clearance to land. After more than 5 hours in the air, Luis Montoya is anxious to get his wife and 2 young daughters on the ground and back to their home in Queens.
As the flight started to prolong, we started to feel uneasy. My wife was carrying the baby at all times, and we were wondering what could be happening. After all, they weren't giving us any information, and most people began to feel nervous.
New York Center finally gives the crew of Avianka 52 the message they've been waiting for.
Avianka 052 Heavy, Avianka Kennedy is 2,400 feet. Can you accept an approach?
That's an affirmative, sir.
They think they're finally in the clear. Then, calamity. The foul weather and zero visibility forces several aircraft just ahead of them to abandon their landing attempts and make a second attempt. The controllers have bad news for the Colombian airliner.
Avianka 052, continue to the left, heading 230 vectors, holding at Cameron again.
Another hold.
Okay, 230 vectors for holding at Cameron. Kennedy, Avianka 052.
Avianka 052, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. You have any estimates, sir?
Avianka 052 Heavy, I might be able to get you in right now. Stand by.
Thank you.
The crew wait silently and hope. But when the reply comes, it's more bad news.
Avianka 052, we just got off the line. It's indefinite holding at this time. The Avianka 052, turn left, heading 090. Hold at Cameron, maintain 1000.
They've been held up for 48 minutes on the way here. Now they've been circling around for another 25 minutes, only a few miles from the safety of JFK Airport.
They were progressively moving toward JFK, and they were held in the air for 3 times. This certainly would put some stress on the crew as to the fact they want to go from A to B. They don't want to fly in a racetrack for an hour just holding.
At 8:55, the cockpit voice recorder begins recording the last 40 minutes of Flight 52. The crew at this stage seem resigned, or are perhaps too timid to complain. Moments later, Avianka is given more unwelcome news.
Avianka 052, expect further clearance time 0205. Expect further clearance in 20 minutes.
It's now that the stress level in the cockpit begins to rise.
0205. Well, I think we need priority. We are passing out of fuel.
Avianka 052, roger. How long can you hold and what is your alternate?
Okay, stand by a minute.
The flight engineer quickly calculates the remaining fuel.
Yes, sir, we'll be able to hold for 5 minutes. That's all we can do.
Avianka 052, roger. And what's your alternate?
We said Boston.
But it's full of traffic, I think.
Avianka 052, say your alternate again.
It was Boston, but we can't do it now. We'll run out of fuel.
Avianka 052, cleared to land at Kennedy via heading 040, maintain 1000 at speed 180.
The Avianka crew, when they felt it, they were being handed off to an approach controller now and given a heading and a lower altitude. I'm sure in their minds they thought, well, they even commented on the cockpit voice recorder, we're being handled or we're being taken care of.
It's okay if I send 4 more your way?
Casino, I'm back in the hold again. I got 4 in the stack and there's no end in sight. I can't keep you times. I'd be guessing if I did. This guy's killing me. Avianka 052 only has 5 more minutes in the hold. You gonna be able to take him or I'll set him up to his alternate?
What is his speed now?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Holding speed.
Slow him to 180 and I'll take him.
Say again?
Slow him to 180 knots and I'll take him. You guys holding a lot?
Man, we're holding all up and down the coast.
Ah, that's good practice, man.
But in this critical handoff from one controller to the next, there is no specific mention of Avianka's critically low fuel.
Nobody told the next controller that. So the next controller, when Avianka came in on the frequency, the controller just said, right, I've got you, proceed to Kennedy, or I'm going to put you in a hold, and put him in a holding pattern over the last approach fix. The options were gone. Now the aircraft could only get into Kennedy.
Avianka, descend and maintain 7000.
Descending to 7000. Avianka 052 heavy.
Avianka 052, before you go, there is a wind shear alert
On final at 1500 feet.
Turn left, heading 090.
Left, heading 090. Avianka 052 heavy.
The high-level wind shear was passed on early on, so he was aware of that. But the low-level wind shear below 500 feet was not passed on.
During the entire flight from Colombia, the plane's autopilot has been unusable. It was reported after the last flight, but Avianka's maintenance men failed to fix it. After more than 6 hours of flying manually, the physical and mental stress is beginning to take its toll on Captain Caviedes.
To me, it's inconceivable someone would have to fly a Boeing 707 without an autopilot. I mean, that's a high workload in smooth air.
After more than an hour and 17 minutes waiting for clearance to land, the crew of Flight 52 believe controllers on the ground are at last aware of their fuel emergency and are clearing the 707 for a priority landing. In the cabin, the flight attendants and passengers have no idea that their plane is dangerously low on fuel.
Then the go-around procedure is stating that the power be applied slowly.
In the cockpit, the crew now hastily discuss the go-around procedure. what the manual says they must do if they can't find the runway through the fog and low clouds and have to go around a second time. It's standard procedure.
Power be applied slowly and to avoid rapid accelerations and to have a minimum of nose-up attitude.
To maintain what?
Minimum nose-up attitude. That means...
Flight engineer Moyano is concerned that if the captain were to pull up the plane's nose too sharply, all the remaining fuel would slosh to the back of the tank, causing engines to stop.
Covered on fuel during the go-around. What it means is it doesn't contain fuel for feeding itself and a flameout could occur. And it is necessary to lower the nose again.
Right now we are proceeding to the airport inbound. We have 17 miles.
Roger.
This means we'll have hamburger tonight.
Avianka, descend and maintain 3,000.
Descend and maintain 3,000. Avianka 052 Heavy.
3,000 feet. They got us. They're already vectoring us.
No, they are descending us.
And they are giving us priority.
Avianka 052 Heavy. Contact Kennedy Tower 119.1. Good day.
Only minutes before landing, Flight 52 is handed off to a JFK tower controller whose shift is about to end.
Avianka 052 Heavy, Kennedy Tower 22 left. You are number 3 following 727 traffic on a 9-mile final.
Avianka 052
Heavy, roger.
Can I lower the landing gear yet?
No, I think it's too early. If we lower the landing gear, we have to maintain a very high nose attitude.
So desperately low is their fuel that the first officer wants to delay putting down the landing gear, which will increase the aircraft's drag, requiring more power and using more of what little fuel they have remaining.
I was so happy. For me, it was like a joy. I mean, we're going to land soon and this is going to be end.
Avianka 052, what is your airspeed?
Avianka 052, 140 knots.
Avianka 052, can you increase your airspeed 10 knots?
10?
Okay, 10 knots, increasing.
Increase.
10 knots more.
Tell me things louder because I'm not hearing it. Lower the gear.
Gear down.
Avianka
05222 left, wind 190 at 20, cleared to land.
Clear to land, Avianka 052 Heavy. Wind check, please.
190 at 20.
With the weather deteriorating and flying on fumes, the crew of Flight 52 will have only one chance of getting their 149 passengers safely on the ground.
Avianka 052, say airspeed.
145 knots.
Are we cleared to land now?
Yes, sir, we are clear to land.
Stand by. Flaps 50. Landing checklist complete.
It was extremely important that Avianka 52 landed on their first approach JFK. The voice recorder revealed that the captain was certainly quite concerned about the fuel state, and he was talking aggressively with the first officer, putting out flaps, getting the airplane configured.
The flight engineer had to know they were out of fuel. And when they came in for their first approach, it was time for the flight engineer to say, this is the only approach we're going to be able to make. And he didn't.
Give me 50.
Flaps 50 now.
All set for landing.
Standing by for lights. Slightly below glide slope. 1,000 feet above field. Instruments cross-checked, slightly below.
Stand by for lights.
Stand by.
The wind is slightly from the left, 190 with 20. Below glide slope.
With about 10 minutes of fuel remaining and just 2 miles from the runway, Flight 52 finds itself flying into violent wind shear, forcing them to slow the plane down.
They were getting like 60 knots of wind on the nose. And then as they descended on down through about 500 feet to the ground, they were down to 20 knots. So that's 40 knot change and 1,000 feet of elevation. That's a lot.
This is the wind shear.
Now the wind changes direction. It's pressing them down towards the ground.
Glide slow.
Glide slow.
Sink rate 500 feet.
Glide slow.
The captain desperately searches for the runway, but it's shrouded in low clouds and fog.
Terrain.
Lights.
The runway, where is it?
I don't see it. I don't see it.
The plane's warning system is telling them that they're about to crash.
great. 500 feet.
Just 2 miles from touchdown, Flight 52 has been caught in violent wind shear. To save the plane, Captain Caviedes applies full throttle, burning up more of the plane's precious fuel.
Give me the landing gear up, landing gear up!
The airplane was about 200 feet above the ground, about 2 miles from the runway, which was well below the glide slope and very dangerous. So the airplane almost crashed on its first approach.
When you get a missed approach, now it changes the whole ball game.
Request another traffic pattern.
Executing a missed approach. Avianka 052 heavy.
The operation of pulling the plane up in the missed approach was a very violent one. It was a very steep climb. So we were all thrown back by gravity towards the back of our seats.
Something's going on here. Anything, we're going to crash. This is terrible. I mean, we start praying, but then I pass out. I couldn't handle it anymore.
As Captain Caviedes pulls back hard on the yoke to climb to safety, the 707's remaining fuel is forced to the back of the tank and away from the fuel pumps.
You cannot accelerate the aircraft forward rapidly, and you shouldn't pitch it rapidly.
Smooth with the nose. Smooth with the nose.
You have less than 7,000 pounds. You have to be very careful, or you can slosh that fuel to the back of the tank and unport the inlet to the engines.
Flight 52's violent climb to safety has both frightened and infuriated the passengers.
My baby Daniela also started to feel uneasy and began to cry. We began to get the feeling that something was about to happen.
I buckled up with the baby just in case there was a problem. She's very little, and I was concerned that my weight could have crushed her. I had her in my arms, and we began to say the Lord's Prayer.
I don't know what happened with the runway. I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either.
I didn't see it.
Avianka 052, you were
Making a left turn, correct, sir?
Tell him we are in emergency.
2,000 feet.
That's right, to 180 on
the heading, and we'll try once again. We are running out of fuel.
Okay.
What did he say?
I already advised him that we are going to attempt again.
Advise him we are in emergency. Do you tell him?
Yes, sir, I already advised him.
But the tower controller, at the end of his shift, transfers Avianka 52 to his counterpart in approach control. They'll have to begin all over again.
Contact approach on 118.4.
Approach, Avianka 052 heavy. We just missed a missed approach, and we are maintaining 2,000.
Flaps 14.
Avianka 052 heavy, New York.
Good evening. Climb and maintain 3,000.
Advise him we don't have fuel.
Climb and maintain 3,000. We are running out of fuel, sir.
Okay, fly heading 080.
Did you already advise him we don't have fuel?
Yes, sir, I already advised him. We are going to maintain 3,000, and he's going to get us back.
As they get back in the pattern and circle the field and come back in again. That again adds to the traffic jam that was being created at Kennedy Airport.
Avianka 052 heavy,
I'm going to turn you about 15 miles northeast and then bring you back onto the approach. Is that okay with you and your fuel?
What did he say?
The guy is angry.
I guess so. Thank you very much.
These guys were out, and they didn't say we were out. And he allowed the approach control to vector him way out in the original pattern and 15 miles north of the outer marker again.
Flight 52 is instructed to fly a long approach pattern for another landing attempt. The plane is down to its last dregs of fuel as the crew waits for final clearance from ground controllers.
In their minds that they were being handled and taken care of, and they had enough fuel to go around and shoot the approach. But on the way, they were given a 360 turn because of traffic spacing. And then they were run way out towards Long Island and vectored all around, which was equivalent to holding for another 15, 20 minutes.
Did you get clearance yet?
Can you give us a final yet? Avianka 052 heavy.
Avianka 052.
Affirmative, sir. Turn left, heading 040. Climb and maintain 3,000.
Negative, sir. We are running out of fuel.
Okay, turn left, heading 310, sir.
Set flaps 14.
Okay, and you're number 2 for the
Approach. I just have to give you enough room so you can make it without
having to come out again.
Okay. We're number 2 and flying 360 now.
Avianka 052 Heavy, turn left, heading 330.
The lights in the aircraft start to flicker, a sign that the engines are being starved of fuel.
330 on the heading, Avianka 052.
Once there's no fuel flowing through the pump out of the tank, an amber light comes on to tell you that tank is empty.
Flame out! Flame out on engine number 4!
Flame out on it!
Flame out on engine number 3!
Come to the runway.
The passengers can hear the sound of the engines beginning to shut down.
When the engines went off, I looked over to the lady that was sitting next to me, and I asked her to give me her hand. And I philosophically accepted, I might die here. This is it.
Avianka 052, we just lost 2 engines, and we need priority, please.
Avianka 052.
Turn left, heading 250, intercept the localizer.
250, roger.
Select the ILS.
ILS.
Avianka 052, you're 15
miles from the outer marker. Maintain 2000 until established in the localizer. Cleared for ILS 22 left.
Roger, Avianka.
You select the ILS.
It's ready on 2.
When all the engines flame out and the generators fall off the line, a considerable amount of power is lost, electrical power is lost.
In the cabin, the screams, the crying, and then this terrible sound of the wind against the fuselage as the plane drops from the sky.
Avianka 052, radar contact lost.
Avianka's missing due to the weather thing.
Yeah, Avianka 52 lost an engine.
We're trying to find out why.
Yeah, we're no longer talking to Avianka. He's 15 northeast of Kennedy.
Ah, wonderful.
Clipper 18, turn left, heading 180.
6.5 hours after leaving Colombia, Avianka Flight 52 is missing somewhere over New York.
Yes, hello. I live in Cove Neck in Oyster Bay, and there is a plane crashed in our yard in front of our house.
When I woke up, the first thing that I did, I put my hand over here in my back, and I was bleeding. I said, "Oh my God, we crashed."
Both my legs were broken, and I had, blood all over the place.
El asiento en el que estaba sentada la hija mía, sí recuerdo que
The
estaba
seat where my daughter was sitting was totally destroyed by pieces of steel that happened to have come from the wing.
pedazos de hierro que entraron del ala y lo
I found my baby Daniela amongst the pieces of a torn-up, twisted chair. And I picked her up like this, and she was drenched in blood.
Bañada en sangre.
Avianka Flight 52 has crashed on Long Island, New York, less than 17 miles from JFK Airport. From deep in the woods, medical technician Bob O'Brien can hear the survivors before he can see the shattered 707.
What I first heard was it were just some people who were crying in pain, but it was apparent immediately what had happened when the plane hit the mountain and just stopped dead.
It just fell out of the sky. That's how witnesses describe the crash of Avianka Flight 52. A strangely silent crash.
There was not a big fire here. That will make it easier for investigators to examine if there were any gas or engine problems.
There have been reports of lightning in the area just before the plane went down.
The spokesman for the controllers union says that Kennedy is critically understaffed, a problem that is compounded by bad weather.
Rescuers have not yet given up on finding more victims.
Lo primero que me acuerdo es que yo miro y
First thing I remember is that I looked up and I saw a priest. He was praying for me and I was lying down on the ground. Right above us, I saw 3 or 4 helicopters flying over us.
3 o 4 helicópteros volando encima mío.
managed to get up on top of the fuselage, and there's that door handle that says, in case of emergency, pull here. So I pulled that door handle, and that door handle just went, and the door came open about 4 inches. And then I was able to flip that over, and I could just see piles and piles of people strapped in their seats.
The extreme G-force of the crash has broken off the cockpit and catapulted it through a stand of trees and into the deck of a home some 100 feet from the impact site.
We couldn't get into the cockpit to get to the pilot and the co-pilot. All those chairs, they all just hit that cockpit door and just piled into that fuselage, and just all that added weight and all that inertia now just took over in the front of that and just popped it off, and it rolled to its left side and stopped up against the tree.
Come on, somebody get the back here.
I saw some cables, and I saw a big hole in the fuselage over the passengers that were sitting next to me who were kind of unconscious.
And on top of me was this guy who was bleeding, a big guy, I don't know who he was, but he was on top of me, but I was sitting.
I pulled myself with those cables towards that hole, which was over the wing.
I started screaming, hey, help me out, help me, take me out of here. And then somebody, when they realized that I was alive, they removed they took away the guy who was on top of me, and they took me out of the airplane.
At that moment, a fireman was climbing on the wing, and he saw me, and he said, there's a guy here, and he pulled me out.
Okay. 37 fire and rescue companies from Nassau County are quickly mobilized. The rescue is the largest pre-9/11 operation of its kind in the New York area.
That little girl was sitting up on the fuselage and she was crying, mi madre, mi madre. And that imprint of horror just was, you just in your mind's eye focus right back in on, I saw mi madre, I saw her mother. And I know what that little girl was seeing. It was horrible enough for me, and I'm a professional rescuer.
I realized that my baby was dying, so I began to scream.
Please help me. I had the baby here, please.
The plane has crashed in the wealthy neighborhood of Cove Neck, near the home of the father of tennis star John McEnroe. Medics set up a makeshift triage unit on his lawn. When daylight breaks 10 hours later, 85 survivors have been pulled from the wreck. The lead flight attendant is the only member of crew to survive the crash. Of the 11 babies on board Flight 52, all but one are found alive. Among the dead are several passengers with drugs hidden inside their bodies. Known as drug mules, they're poor people paid by the Colombian drugs cartels to smuggle cocaine into the United States.
It became an issue later on. They posted police officers at the morgue because they were afraid that the drug cartel would come in and try to steal the bodies because they were worth $1 million apiece, and they were waiting for this shipment, and there were a lot of them.
Bob O'Brien scours the tail section for survivors and finds FAA investigators struggling to remove the aircraft's black boxes.
I grabbed the handle and just pulled the whole box out and took that out and brought that out the door and gave it to them.
Even as people are being pulled from the wreckage, the on-site investigation begins. In charge on the ground is Barry Trotter of the National Transportation Safety Board. A former airline pilot, Trotter became an investigator after losing his right arm in a motorcycle accident.
The condition of the aircraft was really astonishing to see that that much of the structure was left in the condition that it was in. It hit right on about a 28-degree embankment, and with the wings and all the other trees, it only slid 28 feet, so it hit and stopped instantly.
Unaware of the details of Avianka's troubled flight, investigators quickly find a valuable piece of evidence.
You could look at the engines right away and you could tell the engines were not turning. So there was no power on the engines. That was the first big clue.
Trotter and his team examine the fuel tanks and find just a few gallons of jet fuel still on board. It becomes clear why the 707's engines stopped turning, but the question of who's to blame is still to be answered. In the community of Cove Neck, New York, salvage workers begin the task of dismantling the shattered remains of Avianka Flight 52. But there's still one critical question. Who is responsible for Flight 52 running out of fuel and causing the death of 72 passengers and crew? The answer will be worth millions of dollars and affect dozens of lives. At the lab of the National Transportation Safety Board in Washington, D.C., investigators are eager to recover data locked inside the two black boxes. The most telling of these is often the flight data recorder, which records critical information, such as the plane's altitude, airspeed, and heading.
When we recovered the flight data recorder and brought it to our lab in Washington, we opened it and found that the foil wrap was not hooked up. So someone had actually intentionally taped the end of the foil so it wouldn't fly around and put it back in the airplane.
Without the crucial flight data recorder, investigators rely heavily on Flight 52's cockpit voice recorder, which is found with more than 40 minutes of voice recordings of the crew and communications between the first officer and air traffic controllers.
Yes, sir. We are clear to land. Stand by. All set for landing. Below glide slope.
And it was apparent from the voice recorder transcript and tape that the captain was not understanding the first officer's radio communications that were being made in English.
Everybody wants to blame the pilot, but he may be the last person to make a decision, and the scenario which caused him to be in that position where he makes the decision was created by several other people along the route.
The captain asked the first officer about 9 times to clarify information or repeat it or to pass on information.
We are going to attempt again.
Advisor, we are in an emergency. Do you tell him?
Did he make a conscious decision to run out of fuel? No. He was sucked into a situation by the air traffic controllers where he ran out of fuel.
Once the airplane got into the JFK area, there was certainly a serious breakdown in communications on the part of the pilots within the cockpit, on the part of the pilots talking to controllers, and controllers talking to the pilots, and the controllers amongst themselves, because there were handoffs and some of the urgency was not passed on within the controller's system. So we had multiple breakdowns in multiple areas here that ultimately led to this accident.
Slow!
The cockpit voice recorder reveals a crew desperate to land the 707 in near zero visibility and in extreme wind shear without the aid of an autopilot.
In this case, the captain had a difficult time maintaining the glide slope during the approach with the wind shear, didn't see the airport, and had to make a go-around. That almost doomed the airplane at that point.
The information being given to pilots en route was a wind shear up as high as 1,500 feet. But their pilots on approach were encountering wind shear as low as 300 feet. And that wasn't passed on to the Avianka pilot.
This is the wind shear.
The crew of Flight 52 is caught off guard. As they descend below 500 feet and slow down, a violent vertical wind forces them towards the ground, nearly causing the plane to crash 2 miles short of the runway. Ironically, Avianka 52's lack of fuel resulted in no fire or explosion, saving the survivors from almost certain death.
If the flight would have found some level ground, it was conceivable he would have slapped the fuselage down and slid to a stop. With no fuel, there would have been no fire, And I think it's very possible that most of the people would have survived it in that case.
As the hearings into the crash begin, lawyer George Tompkins is confronted by controllers who maintain that the Avianka crew failed to use the word emergency, instead using the word priority to communicate their situation.
The government took the position that the pilot never declared an emergency, so no one knew that he had a problem. But saying you're getting low on fuel and saying you cannot make your alternate, the word emergency is not necessary to say.
Negative, sir. We are running out of fuel. We just lost 2 engines and we need priority, please.
And they thought they were telling them when they said we need priority.
Para nosotros en español, la palabra prioridad significa...
In Spanish, for us, the word priority means first.
Corre a mí, te estoy necesitando.
Attend to me, run to me. I need you right now.
No sé si es que...
I don't know if priority in other languages means that you can wait.
Significa que puedes esperar.
To me, priority means a priority. If you ask a child, what is a priority to you, what are you going to say? He doesn't need to say an emergency.
Avianka 052 only has 5 more minutes in the hold. You gonna be able to take him, or I'll set him up to his alternate?
What is his speed now?
I'm not sure, to be quite honest with you. Holding speed.
The NTSB concludes that air traffic's handling of Avianka 52 was proper, considering the information they were getting from the flight crew. Many of the passengers are shocked and outraged by what they feel is a gross injustice, that air traffic control is found blameless. Avianka sues the Federal Aviation Administration, which employs the air traffic controllers, saying they should have done more when Flight 52 told them they were running out of fuel. The FAA settles and ends up paying around 40% of the estimated $200 million compensation due to the victims.
If you listen and read the tapes, the transcripts of the tapes of each Aero traffic control center along the route, and the final, the New York Tracon, New York Tower, Kennedy Tower, you'll find 20 places where this accident could have been avoided if somebody had done something differently.
Among the 85 survivors who escaped the shattered remains of Flight 52 are the Montoya's 2 daughters. Daniela, the baby covered in blood, is now a healthy teenager preparing for college.
The day just before the flight, we took a long trip to visit the Virgin Mary. This is a very important sanctuary in Medellin. Perhaps it was a miracle of God and the Virgin that the 4 of us survived. It was a miracle, and we feel blessed by that.
For many of the survivors, recovering from their injuries has been easier than coming to terms with the reason why Flight 52 ran out of fuel.
I had to learn to walk from scratch. It's difficult enough to deal with the injuries. It makes me very angry to think that a plane went down with 161 souls and almost half the people lost their lives because of a word.
A Boeing 767 cruises high above the Atlantic Ocean on its way to Egypt. 217 people are on board. Just half an hour after takeoff, disaster strikes. The pilot and co-pilot struggle desperately for control of their aircraft. The lives of all on board will depend on these 2 pilots and what they do about this dive towards the ocean.
We're not getting any oxygen. We have the terrain alarm. AeroPeru 603. We are in an emergency.
We are in an emergency.
The John F. Kennedy International Airport outside New York City is one of the busiest airports in the world. In 1999, nearly 32 million passengers fly in and out. More than 340,000 flights take off and land. EgyptAir Flight 990 is destined to be one of the most controversial ever to leave this airport. The fate of this flight challenges the strength of an international friendship between two allies and uncovers a hidden mechanical flaw in one of the world's most popular airliners. The FBI will become involved.
We reviewed surveillance tapes to indicate whether or not anything unusual was loaded on that plane.
Investigators in two countries developed two different theories. Was this a tragic accident or a terrible crime? Just after 1 a.m. on October the 31st, 1999, the 217 people on board EgyptAir Flight 990 are waiting for takeoff. The flight's command captain is Captain Ahmed El-Habashi. He's been with EgyptAir for 36 years. The command first officer is 36-year-old Adel Anwar. He switched duty with another co-pilot so he could return home in time for his wedding.
Soon be a married man. Congratulations, Adel. Thank you very much.
The airline's chief pilot for the Boeing 767, Captain Hatem Rushdie, joins them in the cockpit. At 1:20 in the morning, First Officer Adel Anwar is going through his takeoff clearance with air traffic control.
Following gateway, clear for takeoff, runway 22 right, EgyptAir 990 heavy.
Cabin crew advised.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Cabin crew, takeoff position.
After an everyday blessing, the co-pilot assists the takeoff. For safety, both pilots push the throttles. On a flight of 10 hours, it's standard practice at EgyptAir to provide a relief crew to share the flying duties. The command crew takes off and lands. The relief crew flies the middle portion. Tonight, Captain Raouf Nur el-Din and First Officer Gamil el-Batouti are the relief crew. They will take over after the first 3 or 4 hours and fly the plane until shortly before Cairo.
V1, rotate. Positive rate of climb, both sides. 1,000.
EgyptAir 990 heavy, contact, departure now, 125.7.
1257, bye.
A large number of passengers are senior citizens from the United States, looking forward to touring the wonders of ancient Egypt.
My dad and Ginny were married in 1998 on October 23rd. And to celebrate their first anniversary, they decided to take a trip to Egypt.
Anita Child's parents are retired and on their way to Egypt as well.
They always had great time on these tours. They traveled frequently, and so it was a pleasure trip they were looking forward to, seeing the Holy Land especially.
Maureen Sacratini and her brother John Simmermeyer enjoyed the fact that their parents loved to travel.
They had been particularly fond of a program known as Elder Hostel, and this particular vacation trip to visit the pyramids and the other historical sites in Egypt was an Elder Hostel trip.
There are 14 of EgyptAir's experienced crew operating the flight. There are also 33 Egyptian military officers and pilots on board, returning after training with the American Armed Forces. Gamil el-Batouti used to be an Egyptian Air Force flight instructor. He's now one of the oldest first officers at EgyptAir. He's so much older than the other co-pilots that out of respect they call him Captain. But some at EgyptAir think that Captain el-Batouti has been coasting too long on the favors of old friends. Just over 20 minutes after takeoff, el-Batouti is about to leave his seat. Former National Transportation Safety Board investigator Greg Phillips became an expert on the events of this flight.
The relief first officer, who would have been expected to come to the cockpit,
somewhere during the later part of the flight, halfway or wherever he was comfortable, wherever the normal change would have been. He came into the cockpit about 20 minutes after takeoff.
Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
How are you, sir?
What's news?
I slept, I swear. Just wait. Let me tell you something. I'm not going to sleep at all. I might come sit for 2 hours and then... I slept. I slept. You mean you're not going to get up? You will get up. Go and take some rest and come back. You should have told me this. You should have told me this, Captain Gamal. You should have said, Adele...
Did I even see you?
I will work first. Just leave me a message.
The younger first officer seems surprised that El Battuti wants to replace him so early in the flight.
And I'm not sleepy. So you take your time sleeping, and when you wake up, whenever you wake up, you come back, Captain, okay?
I'll come either way.
Captain.
Come and work the last few hours and that's all?
It's not like that. That's not the point. Look, if you want to sit here, there's no problem.
I'll come back to you. I'll go get something to eat and come back, all right?
Fine, fine. Look here. Why don't you go... Why don't they bring your dinner to you here, and then I'll go sleep, okay?
That's good.
Okay, with your permission, Captain.
And with that, El Battuti leaves to get his meal.
Do you see how he does whatever he pleases?
Do you know why that is?
Captain El Habashi senses his first officer's resentment and tries to smooth over the situation.
Are you a youngster?
Anwar wonders if El Battuti wants to take over because he may not want to work with Relief Captain Noor El-Din.
Doesn't he want to work with Rauf, or what?
It's possible, God knows. But look, you shouldn't get upset, right? By this prophet, he's just talking nonsense. That's it.
Everything's under control.
Okay, Chief. Thanks a day.
First Officer Anwar concedes and is ready to hand over to El Battuti. Normally, this is the most relaxed, easy part of a long flight for pilots and passengers alike. The highly automated aircraft systems will take care of the flying for several hours.
It's very unusual for an airplane flying over the Atlantic at nighttime to encounter any kind of difficulties. We normally expect accidents to happen in approach or landing or near airports, and very seldom do we get anything out over the ocean in the middle of the night.
Excuse me, Jimmy, while I take a quick trip to the toilet.
Go ahead, please.
Before it gets crowded, while they're still eating, I'll be back to you.
Before the captain returns, disaster will strike EgyptAir Flight 990. The fate of everyone on board will be in the hands of the co-pilot, the man who shouldn't be here in the first place. On a Boeing 767 bound for Cairo, EgyptAir's Flight 990 appears to be cruising smoothly over the Atlantic. The relief first officer Gamil El Battuti is alone in the cockpit, while the captain has gone to the washroom. But then the plane dips, plunging down. The nose pitches down, creating zero-G, weightlessness, throughout the aircraft.
This airplane basically started at 1G, which is what we'd expect for level cruise flight. As you push the nose down, as if you would be cresting the top of a hill in a car at a high speed that drops away, you'd feel the airplane fall away from you, and you would start to feel a little light in the seat, and as the dive progressed, you would feel a little bit lighter yet.
I rely on God.
Whatever the first officer is intending, he says nothing except this phrase again and again. Captain El Habashi fights the disorientation of zero gravity, desperately trying to return to the cockpit. An American journalist living in France studied this flight extensively.
16 seconds after the dive began, when the airplane had gone into zero G and into negative G and was at an extreme angle, the captain somehow made his way back into the cockpit. How he did that physically, I will never know.
Warning signals indicate the dive is exceeding the maximum speed allowed for the plane, taking them to 99% of the speed of sound. This far past the plane's design limits, the stresses on the airframe are pulling it apart.
What's happening?
Captain El Habashi pulls back hard on his control column. Then he tries to use the engines to power their way out of the dive by pushing forward on the throttles, but he gets nothing.
What? You shut off the engines? Oh, God.
Desperate, the captain deploys the speed brakes, panels standing up from the wings, in an effort to slow the dive. The dive is slowing, back from the brink of the sound barrier. The dive goes on, but the nose is coming up. In just seconds, they go from 0G to double the force of gravity. Captain El Habashi struggles to level the plane and pulls back hard on the control column. The 767's dive begins to slow.
Who would be? You shut off the engine, Paul!
In seconds, the engines stop and the power goes off, plunging the aircraft into darkness. Here, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder stop. No one knows what happened in the plane during the next 2 minutes, but radar tracks its path. The plane is climbing again. Up from about 5,000 meters to over 7,500 meters as the aircraft structure is weakened by the stresses of abnormal speeds and maneuvers. Then the aircraft falls into another terrifying dive. Stressed beyond endurance, the left engine is ripped from the plane.
Egypt Air 990, New York Center. Egypt Air 990, if you copy...
At 1:52 a.m., Flight 990 disappears from radar screens, crashing into the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, some 100 kilometers off the American coast. Coast Guard search and rescue get a call at 2:15 a.m. A plane has disappeared, and Coast Guard vessels are called to the scene. The U.S. merchant marine training vessel King's Pointer is first to arrive.
Just as the day was dawning, we noticed oil in the water. And that was the first indication, so we turned the ship around back into the oil, and about as soon as we turned around, we started seeing debris rise up to the surface.
In Heliopolis, a Cairo suburb, Captain El Habashi's daughter can only guess what her father went through.
Can you imagine if you have a beloved one, a father, a daughter, or a brother, facing all the horrors of finding himself falling from 36,000 feet suddenly, trying to save his life, his colleagues' lives, the people, the passengers.
In a home in Maryland, a sleepy Sunday morning takes a tragic turn.
I had woken up for some reason at 5:30 in the morning, and we were flipping on the TV to check the weather, and we were deciding what mass we were going to be going to. It was Sunday. And immediately on CNN, they had Flight 990 missing, and I was in total shock. I ran down to my refrigerator where I had my parents' itinerary, and I ripped it off and just started sobbing uncontrollably. I was screaming. I didn't know what to do.
We located a significant debris field, and that we have concentrated our search efforts since then on about a 36 square mile of area, about 50 miles south of Nantucket.
At the end of October, the waters of the North Atlantic are so cold that normal life expectancy is about 5 to 6 hours. In Cairo, Relief Captain Raouf Nur el-Din's daughter May clung to hope for her father.
I was talking to myself, trying to convince myself that my father was not on this plane, and if he's on this plane, he will be safe, because my father was an Air Force pilot. He had a very good experience, and I thought maybe if the plane crashed, he will be able to, you know, to be in a safe place and to swim and to go to land.
At the crash site, all that's left is pieces. Within hours, authorities know there's little hope for survivors.
We believe at this point that it is in everyone's best interest to no longer expect that we will find survivors in this case.
Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak reaches out to a stricken nation. This is the worst air crash in Egypt's history.
Really, I was shocked. It's a big tragedy for us. And I give my condolences to all the passengers, to the families of the crews who have been lost in this tragedy. And I've contact with President Clinton and other DCs. And he's giving good support for trying to find, investigate, see what was the reason.
The American president would answer his ally with a commitment.
And I spoke earlier with President Mubarak of Egypt today to express my condolences and to assure him that we would be working together closely until this matter is resolved. We do not know what caused this tragedy.
In northern Indiana, music historian Jim Brokaw learned what happened to his father and stepmother.
One of the many things that I felt on that first horrible morning was the sense that people all over the world were confronting the same horrible circumstances that I was, and had the same sense of helplessness and disorientation that I did.
Shocked and grieving, relatives arrive at Newport, Rhode Island. They will seek answers and share comfort. There were 100 Americans, 89 Egyptians, 21 Canadians, and 7 victims of other nationalities on board. They're all asking, what caused this tragedy? Teams of investigators will pursue that question for years to come.
We are beginning what may be a long investigation, and we are prepared to do what it takes to find the answers to the questions we are seeking.
In Washington, Greg Phillips from the National Transportation Safety Board leads the investigation into this crash.
From the very beginning, we realized it was a very difficult case. The airplane was in cruise, nighttime, out over the ocean, and when it went into the ocean, there was just a little bit of floating debris, but we had to recover the airplane from the bottom of the ocean to begin the investigation.
The job of finding the black boxes would be difficult. The water is about 70 meters deep, and the tremendous force of the crash has smashed the locator beacons off the boxes.
In this case, both the underwater locators, which are called pingers, which help us locate the boxes underwater, were detached. So we had an extra difficult job in trying to find the actual boxes where the recording material was contained.
9 days after the crash, the US Navy's unmanned submarine Deep Drone recovers the first of the 2 black boxes, the flight data recorder, which stores information about what the aircraft and its systems were doing. 4 days later, the second black box, the cockpit voice recorder, lands on the deck and is carefully transported to the NTSB laboratories. The cockpit voice recorder captures all sounds in the cockpit for the last 30 minutes of the flight. The black boxes are protected to withstand impacts of 3,400 times the force of gravity. The recovery of the cockpit voice recorder provided a gripping and bewildering picture of the last minutes of a disaster. Here, investigators hope, is the key to unlock the mystery of Flight 990. Translating the Arabic spoken in the cockpit is a top priority at NTSB headquarters.
The cockpit voice recorder was good quality. It was easily usable and translatable by the investigation team. The cockpit voice recorder is always just a piece of the investigation that fits many other pieces of a puzzle. It goes along with flight data, recorded data, examination of the wreckage, and all the other aspects of investigation.
On major investigations like the crash of EgyptAir 990, the NTSB works routinely with the FBI. The physical evidence has to be managed in case it's needed in court. Former FBI Assistant Director Lou Shaliro is a veteran investigator and no stranger to air crashes.
By the time Egypt Air occurred, we were fairly adept at looking at airline disasters, particularly with the view of developing whether or not a terrorist incident or a criminal act had occurred.
The FBI checked for evidence of bombs, terrorists, or terrorist targets on the flight.
Trying to determine luggage against the passenger list and whether or not there was anything unusual in the manifest, whether or not the people that loaded the plane could recall anything that would have caused them concern. We reviewed surveillance tapes to indicate whether or not anything unusual was loaded on that plane. We had no evidence at all of any explosive device on board Egypt Air that night.
At the NTSB, American investigators found no fault in the aircraft from studying the flight data recorder. But Egypt's members of the investigation team insisted that not all the evidence was in. Much of the wreckage was still in storage on Rhode Island. They hope the cause of the crash can be found here. Egypt's representatives search for any possible mechanical cause for the crash. While they search, other theories are pursued. A study into the causes of airline crashes published in January 2001 points to pilot error as the cause of 1/3 of these accidents. It also finds a strong connection between bad weather and pilot error. But the crash of Egypt Air 990 occurred in clear weather with veteran pilots. What happened in the cockpit would divide the investigation and fuel an international controversy. October 1999, Egypt Air Flight 990 crashes into the Atlantic Ocean, killing all 217 people on board. The investigation develops in two directions: fault in the airplane and pilot action. Rumors swirl about what or who may have caused this terrible crash. One of the key questions: why was the relief first officer in the cockpit hours earlier than expected? He was supposed to replace Adel Anwar much later in the flight. But in Cairo, Adel Anwar's older brother Tarak has no problem with Adel being replaced in the cockpit.
Suppose I am with one of my friends and we are traveling in a car and he asks me if he can drive instead of me. Is this going to be a problem? For example, if Adel didn't get enough sleep and Captain Jamil told him, "Let me fly the plane instead of you and you go rest," there is no problem with that.
When the actions in the cockpit are put together with the voices recorded, a timeline emerges that indicates a series of initially bewildering decisions.
I'll be back to you.
The timeline reveals that after Captain El Habashi leaves the cockpit, there's a series of sounds whose meaning can only be guessed at.
Control it.
And then the relief first officer disconnects the autopilot.
I rely on God.
Released from the autopilot's control, the plane starts to descend, rolling to the left. Egypt's experts described El Batuti's decision to shut off the autopilot as a possible reaction to an unusual movement of the aircraft, prompting him to take manual control. However, the leader of the NTSB investigation disagrees.
We found no reason for the autopilot to be disconnected by a fault or failure in the airplane.
Normally, all aircraft movements are meant to keep passengers comfortable, as though they were on the ground. After switching off the autopilot, El Batuti pushes his control column forward, lowering the elevator panels. So the flight data recorder indicates to the NTSB. Then he pulls the throttles back, reducing engine power. This causes the plane to dive. Egypt's investigators say El Batuti was not trying to crash the plane, and there may have been an elevator failure which he could not overcome. Strangely, there is no discussion of a problem on the cockpit tape. When the captain made his way back to the cockpit, he asked the first officer what was going on and never received a response. As former Director of Aviation Safety, Bernard Loeb oversaw all air crash investigations at the NTSB.
It is well understood that in a cockpit,
a jet transport cockpit of virtually any airline in the world, when a captain comes in and asks a question, the first officer will respond. When the captain asked his questions, Battuti did not respond.
Fighting the dive, pulling his column back all the way, the captain cannot gain complete control of the elevator, so he tries the throttles to power out of the dive. He was unaware that seconds earlier the first officer had shut off the fuel to the engines. Egypt's experts say that El Battuti may have been acting out of caution. The flight data show that a low oil pressure warning appeared. That can mean the engines have flamed out. The captain may have then ordered the fuel to the engines shut off as part of the procedure for restarting the engines.
Shut the engines! It's shut!
The NTSB consider this possible scenario as well.
The engines shut off on a two-engine airplane at night over the water. We couldn't understand any reason why any emergency could cause you to shut all the power off available to the airplane when you're heading away from the nearest airport.
Foremost among the Egyptian investigators' scenarios was a tragic elevator failure. In Washington, at the National Transportation Safety Board, analysis of the flight data recorder indicates that Captain El-Habashi was pulling back on his column to make the plane climb, while First Officer El Battuti appears to be pushing forward on his column, making the plane go down. Elevators work simply. Pull back on the column and the elevators go up, lifting the plane. Push forward and the elevator panels move down to make the plane descend. They work together, but in this case they're going in opposite directions. Egypt's experts argued that this crash could have been caused by a failure in the elevator assembly, producing an elevator hardover, a jam in the elevator controls which lock them in the down position, plunging the aircraft into an uncontrollable dive. They stated that First Officer El Battuti was working to regain control of the elevators, and added that he and Captain El-Habashi were working together. If there had been an elevator failure, it could explain the first officer's unusual performance in the cockpit.
Pull!
Supporting evidence is found when analyzing fragments of the wreckage in the hangar at Rhode Island. Here, investigators made a remarkable discovery: 3 unusually sheared rivets. These tiny parts play an important role in the Boeing 767 elevator assembly. Egypt's consulting experts determined that the scratches in the metal surfaces of these rivets showed that they were sheared off in 2 different directions. One direction could be attributed to the crash. The second could indicate that the break occurred before the crash, and so may have indicated a jam in the elevators. Egypt's experts drew this to the attention of the Federal Aviation Administration, America's civil aviation regulator. Alarmed by the potential risks, the FAA ordered all bell crank rivets to be inspected on every Boeing 767 in operation around the world. The inspections uncovered 136 sheared rivets, and 34 aircraft were grounded until the fault was fixed. The FAA said the problem could result in loss of controllability of the airplane. Egypt's investigators had uncovered a credible-sounding scenario: that the sheared rivets in the elevator assembly of the Boeing 767 indicated a jam that could have caused an elevator hardover that the pilots could not overcome. NTSB investigator Greg Phillips disagreed.
Those are by design for the Boeing 767. The controls can be split. They're designed that way in case one of the surfaces, the control surfaces, fails, so that whoever is still in control of the airplane or can control the airplane with a failed elevator.
Before he became an investigative writer, William Langewiescher was a commercial airline pilot. Flight 990's maneuvers are programmed into a flight simulator, in order for Langewiesche to test a pilot's reactions.
To see an airplane going so wildly into a dive, to see the altimeters unwinding at that speed, to hear the horns and warning signals going off, is frightening.
Whatever the cause of the dive, Langewiesche tries a variety of responses to recover from it.
Finally, they asked me to wait at the extreme 15 seconds. To sit in a 767 or any airplane going out of control and do nothing for 15 seconds. 15 seconds is a long time. It's inconceivable, but I did it. And even at 15 seconds, even waiting 15 seconds, I was able, through no particular skill, really reacting almost as any student pilot would, to recover the airplane, recover from the dive, before the airplane exceeded its limits.
No Boeing 767 has suffered from an elevator hardover and dive before or since the crash. The aviation experts hired by Egypt developed a wide range of scenarios, citing a fault in the elevator assembly as a possible cause of the crash.
Based on the data, the information we have from the testing that was done as a group effort with all the best thinking everybody had at the time, we could not make this airplane do what it did with any of the failure scenarios that were presented to us.
While mechanical failure scenarios were exhausted and terrorism was excluded, the FBI continued to dig into the life of First Officer Gamil El-Batouti. Less than 3 weeks after the disaster, news media report that in the final moments before the crash, El-Batouti said, "I have made my decision. I put my faith in God," causing many to believe he might be an Islamic militant bent on destruction. But the translation was incorrect.
From our initial review of Batouti's background, he was a fairly religious person, but I don't think we had anything to determine that his religious beliefs were radical or beyond what would have been a normal religious person.
What had Batouti said, and what does it mean? Egyptian professor Amin Bonar teaches Arabic at Georgetown University in Washington.
Tawakkaltu means I depend, I rely, I trust, and ala, on, and Allah is God. Tawakkaltu ala Allah, on God I rely, I depend in whatever I'm going to be embarking on. People use it when they start a trip, when they start driving, going back home, you say Tawakkaltu ala Allah. When you have an exam, you begin by saying Tawakkaltu ala Allah. It's a very positive phrase. So it's not the kind of phrase that anyone would be using before they commit a crime or before they commit suicide. Tawakkaltu ala Allah.
To say this common phrase once was normal, but El-Batouti repeated it 11 times.
What's happening? Tawakkaltu ala Allah.
I expect that Captain Batouti would say, there is a fire in the engines, something stopped, I can see something's hitting the plane, anything like that. But he go on endlessly saying, Tawakkaltu ala Allah. This is not logic.
For the El-Batouti family, their grief would be compounded by the need to defend their father's honor.
When he died, the one thing we had to reassure us was that he had died honorably. And now they're trying to take that away from us.
There is a lot of mechanical failures. Why you have only to say that it's a deliberate act, no mechanical, no weather, no mechanical, no weather. So why? Because he's an Egyptian pilot.
Chairman Jim Hall allowed that it could have been a criminal act rather than an accident. The investigation could end up in the hands of the FBI alone.
It is only prudent for the National Transportation Safety Board to consult with these experts and officials to fully evaluate this information prior to any final decision on whether the responsibility for this investigation should transfer to the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Egypt's President Hosni Mubarak, formerly commander of the Egyptian Air Force, had known Gamil el-Batouti, according to his nephew Walid. Mubarak asked President Bill Clinton to intercede to keep the crash from becoming an FBI matter. Since the crash, Walid el-Batouti, nephew of Gamil, has become the el-Batouti family spokesman.
You have to understand that the highest ranking in this country, which is the Egyptian president, was an Air Force pilot. And he was asked, and he says, according to my experience, it's in the tail unit. Something happened there. It's not suicide. It could be either a mechanical failure, a manufacturing failure, something.
In America, the FBI focuses on Gamil el-Batouti and the question of motive. The FBI would learn about the man in control of Egyptair 990, interviewing colleagues and friends, discovering a dark side to Gamil el-Batouti. Investigating the cause of the crash of Egyptair 990, the spotlight falls on the character and history of Relief First Officer Gamil el-Batouti.
He was 59 years old, approaching 60, had never risen above the rank of first officer. That may have caused him some animosity towards Egyptair. Had some personal issues in his own life, in terms of financial, some issues in terms of his family members being sick, needing medical attention.
They've used the daughter in the accusation as they said she was sick, and that's why maybe he committed suicide. Before we go to this, I will give you the reason. First, the doctors have already, on that particular flight, have already told them that your daughter is going positive with the medication and everything is going fine, and he was extremely happy. He was so excited to come back.
Gamil el-Batouti was bringing her medical records back that night, among other things.
Okay, he bought tires for his son, and an argument went on the phone between him and his son.
My father called me to come to the airport because he could not carry all 4 tires himself.
He says, listen, I carry your tires all the way from the States. You don't want to come and carry it from the airport? It's a very natural thing. A man is going to commit suicide. Why would he do this?
In New York, the FBI continued their investigation at the Hotel Pennsylvania, where Egyptair had a block booking of about 50 rooms for their crews.
The investigation that the FBI was able to do, as far as Batouti's background, probably spanned a period of about a year or so, at least from the records that we were able to obtain, and from the interviews we did at the various places that he stayed. So he did have, I think, a propensity to engage in behavior with some of the hotel people in terms of sexual misconduct.
Hey, pretty lady, where did you get to?
Which, you know, at the time really appeared to be totally out of the realm of what was normal for a person of that status to do.
A husband and father of 5, Gamil el-Batouti was notorious for leering at and bothering female guests and hotel staff.
Come to my room.
The FBI learned that 2 years before the crash, 2 young women reported that he called them on their hotel room phone, telling them to look out the window across the courtyard.
You have a good time too.
When they did, they saw el-Batouti exposing himself and reported the incident to hotel security. His provocative behavior would continue. A hotel maid told the FBI that the night before the crash of Egyptair 990, el-Batouti had sexually harassed her again.
No, I want to talk to you because, look, I give you $100 if you just come to my room.
I'm not here for that.
Oh, sure.
I'm here to work. Just leave me alone.
Nah, don't be like that.
When the maid reported the approach, another addition was made to the hotel's record of sexual harassment of guests and staff by el-Batouti.
The allegation of the hotel, as far as they said, it happened way before, not one day before the flight. Not one day before the flight, as has been mentioned.
The hotel maid told the FBI the incident took place on October the 29th, 1999, the day before the flight. 3 months after the FBI began investigating el-Batouti, an Egyptair flight landed in London. The plane's captain requested political asylum in the United Kingdom. He claimed to have information about the cause of the crash of Egyptair 990, and he feared reprisals in Egypt. Captain Hamdi Taha was a colleague of Gamil el-Batouti, and he was walking away from his wife, his family, and his country. The FBI sent a special agent, And along with a British security officer, he interviewed Captain Tahar.
Were you aware of El Batouti displaying sexually inappropriate behavior?
Yes. This is very important. I heard it from pilots who I trust. Batouti got into trouble for sexual misbehavior in New York with maids and following women and so on. The airline tolerated this for a while, and they told him several times, maybe you can get away with this normally, but this is America. You represent our country. You cannot do these things.
Captain Tahar's information was second-hand, but his description of El Batouti meeting with the airline's chief pilot was intriguing.
Khatem Rushdie went to see Batouti the night they took Flight 990. They had a meeting in a hotel. He told him that what he had done could not be covered up, and something had to be done. The flight back to Cairo from New York would be his last flight.
Camille, we go back many years together. But this will be your last flight to the United States.
He would not be flying to America anymore. Batouti had just had these big privileges taken away from him, and he was humiliated. So, I think that what happened was this. He must have said to himself, if this is going to be my last flight, it will be Khatem Rushdie's last flight also.
Certainly within various corporations where people bring weapons into the office and attempt to take revenge against people that they feel have aggrieved them. Perhaps Batouti felt that Egypt Air had been the cause of some of his issues, and unfortunately in this case it was the kind of office that was flying at 33,000 feet.
The FBI provides Tahar's interviews to the NTSB. Egyptian officials asked for another Egypt Air pilot to be interviewed. Mohammed Badrawi had known El Batouti for 40 years. Interviewed at the NTSB, he described discussing with Captain Rushdie what to do about El Batouti's behavior.
Do you know if Khatem Rushdie was aware of the situation with Batouti?
Well, of course he knew. But he pretended not to know, I think, because Khatem Rushdie is the chief pilot.
Badrawi confirms that Khatem Rushdie is upset about El Batouti's harassment of women at the hotel. So Badrawi takes Rushdie's concerns to his old friend.
And if he didn't listen to you, what did you tell him was going to happen?
Nothing much, really. You see, he was on his way out. We don't normally touch people when they're approaching 60.
I know. I'm not saying that you are doing something wrong. They are saying that you're doing something wrong.
I know you are my friend.
We have a little patience, and then they're out.
Badrawi would ask Rushdie to be patient with his old friend, considering that El Batouti only had 3 months to go before retirement.
We've been in the Air Force for 40 years. All he needs is a few more months.
Badrawi's interview confirmed that Rushdie did believe El Batouti's behavior had to be dealt with, and he denied Tahar's claim of a meeting between the two on the night of the crash. But Captain Tahar was not done. He had another compelling story to add. In London, an Egyptian pilot has requested political asylum and is offering an insider's view of the most controversial tragedy in the history of Egypt Air. Captain Tahar revealed to the FBI how Egypt Air briefed its pilots about the crash.
When they had done the transcripts of the cockpit voice recorder, the Egypt Air Chief of Operations called all flight crew to a special meeting in Cairo and told us the facts. Just the facts. No commentary. No explanation of any technical problem. He did not say anything, but all we pilots realized that this was not an accident. And then he told us not to talk to anyone about it. Don't talk to your family. Don't talk on the phone. Don't talk to each other, he told us. All of us realized that Batouti had done this on purpose.
For the American families involved, this was a case of 216 murders and 1 suicide. In Egypt, big, close, extended families combine with a strong religious faith to deny that Egyptians commit suicide.
The story has many sides. It has to do with religion, it has to do with beliefs, it has to do with the culture. I think until today, still in the Egyptian culture, people don't believe that Muslims or that Egyptians or that people coming from that culture commit suicide.
Cultural differences were not the only impediments to this investigation.
One of the difficulties that we did have was that when we went over to Egypt and attempted to really get into his background, it became a very sensitive issue for the Egyptian government.
FBI efforts to learn about El Battouti's personal life and family relations would be stymied.
It became almost to the point where we were never really able to develop all the things that we needed to get at.
Finally, on March the 21st, 2002, after a nearly $10 million investigation over 2 years and 5 months, the NTSB publishes its report and determines that
the probable cause of the Egypt Air Flight 990 accident is the airplane's departure from normal cruise flight and subsequent impact with the Atlantic Ocean as a result of the Relief First Officer's flight control inputs.
the Egyptian Civil Aviation Authority responded angrily, and their response read in part,
It is obvious that the NTSB has not done the type of professional accident investigation expected by the Egyptian government.
The NTSB's former director of aviation safety takes exception to the Egyptian view.
What was unprofessional was the insistence by the Egyptians, in the face of irrefutable evidence to anyone who knows anything about investigating airplane accidents and who knows anything about aerodynamics in airplanes, was the fact that this airplane was intentionally flown into the ocean. No scenario that the Egyptians came up with, or that we came up with, in which there were some sort of mechanical failure in the elevator control system would either match the flight profile or was a situation in which the airplane was not recoverable.
Like many of his countrymen, the loyal nephew cannot believe his uncle Gamil was a mass murderer.
This is a simple plane crash. It was put and made like this for no reason. It shows that it's a cover-up.
Greg Phillips takes pride in having thoroughly investigated every lead and every scenario.
When we sign on to be accident investigators, we do it with the idea that we're going to keep the next one from happening, not to cover up one that did because of whatever reason may be given to us. I've never known that to happen. I've never even known it to come close to happening.
There continue to be differing perspectives on the crash of Egypt Air Flight 990, and unanswered questions remain for broken and damaged families. For many of them, answers to how and why this plane crashed will forever be a painful mystery.
Alpha Lima Whiskey 301 Santo Domingo
A
coming.
Boeing 757 disappears
Alpha
from radar
Lima
with
Whiskey
189 people on
301
board.
Santo Domingo. Come
The
in,
plane's
please.
wreckage is soon found at sea. There are no survivors to say what happened.
This accident was the first major loss of a Boeing 757 aircraft.
Investigators find no clues in the wreckage. Only the plane's black box can tell them what happened. The tape raises a perplexing question.
301 Santo Domingo, come in, please.
My airspeed indicator is not working.
What's happening?
How had the failure of one single instrument caused the crash of one of the world's most sophisticated jetliners? Gregorio Luperon International Airport in Puerto Plata, the Dominican Republic. February the 6th, 1996. The small Caribbean island is a popular winter getaway. A group of German tourists has been delayed. There are mechanical problems with the jet that was supposed to take them back to Frankfurt. The airline has arranged to lease another plane for the flight. The replacement jet is owned by Turkish charter company Bergenair. They have a 757 that's been sitting on the tarmac for almost 3 weeks. But it takes several hours to get the plane ready to go, and to get the Turkish crew aboard. By 10:15 p.m., the plane and most of its crew are at the gate. More than 4 hours after they were supposed to take off, the first of the passengers begin boarding the plane. They have a 9-hour flight to Frankfurt ahead of them.
Alpha Lima Whiskey 301.
Shortly after 11:30, Bergenair Flight 301 is given permission to leave the gate.
Pushback granted.
Moments later, it taxis to the threshold of the runway.
Cabin crew, take your seats, ready for takeoff. Cabin announcement is completed. Exterior
First
lights.
Officer Aykut Gergin is new to the 757 with fewer than 75 hours in the plane.
Before
All in
takeoff
the last
checklist
3
completed.
months.
Thank you. Ready for takeoff.
In contrast, Captain Ahmet Erdem is one of Bergenair's most senior pilots. He's logged thousands of hours in this type of plane.
Alpha Lima Whiskey 301, ready for takeoff.
301, cleared for takeoff, runway 08.
Cleared for takeoff. Runway 08, 301. Thank you.
A good flight.
Good flight. Good flight.
Mulis Evrenesolu is on this flight as a relief pilot. Like First Officer Gergin, he's been flying the 757 for less than 3 months. As the plane accelerates to takeoff speed, a light rain begins to fall.
Power set. Okay, check.
First Officer Aykut Gergin watches his airspeed indicator for a routine instrument check.
As the airplane's accelerating to takeoff speed, the first officer calls 80 knots.
80 knots. Check.
The captain, in theory, should verify that his airspeed indicator also reads 80 knots.
My airspeed indicator is not working.
The captain's airspeed should read the same as his first officer's.
120.
But the readings do not match.
Is yours working? Yes, sir. You tell me.
Erdem wants his first officer to tell him when the plane hits takeoff speed.
V1.
At 150 knots, the plane hits V1, the point of no return.
Rotate.
The captain must pull back on his column and get the plane in the air.
Positive climb. Gear up. Positive climb. Gear is up.
At 11:42, the plane takes off. Seconds later, Captain Erdem's airspeed indicator comes to life.
Is it possible to turn off the wipers?
Okay. Wipers off.
Climb thrust.
Climb thrust.
First Officer Gergin reduces power to the engines for a gradual climb to cruising altitude.
301, Airborne 45, switch over Santo Domingo, 1243.
1243, bye-bye, sir.
Climbing through 2,500 feet.
Santo Domingo, good evening.
First Officer
Alpha Lima
Gergin
Whiskey,
establishes
301,
contact
climbing
with the island's main tower in Santo Domingo.
Alpha Lima Whiskey 301, climb and maintain 280.
Center autopilot on, please.
Center autopilot, as command.
Thank you.
1 minute and 30 seconds into the flight, the autopilot takes over. Onboard computers now make all the calculations and adjustments necessary to keep the plane climbing safely. Almost immediately, the computer reports a problem.
Rudder ratio, Mach airspeed trim.
2 different alerts warn the pilots that the plane is traveling far too
Yes,
fast.
trim.
But the first officer's airspeed indicator shows the plane climbing at a normal speed, 220 knots.
Something's wrong here.
Unaware that there are any problems, the controller directs Bergenair Flight 301 to continue climbing.
Alpha Lima Whiskey 301, report POCAC.
Okay, 280, I'll call you over POCAC. 301.
Okay, there's something crazy. Do you see it?
In the cockpit, the situation gets more confusing. The first officer's airspeed indicator shows that the plane is flying much too slowly.
Mine shows only 200 now, and decreasing, sir.
But the captain's gauge shows the plane flying far too fast, 325 knots.
Both of them are wrong. What can we do? Let's check the circuit breakers.
Yes, sir.
As the first warning is eliminated, a more persistent warning replaces it. The overspeed warning tells the crew that they are approaching 350 knots, the maximum speed at which the plane was designed to fly at this altitude.
Okay, it's no matter. Let's pull the airspeed. Let's see.
Resetting the circuit breakers turns off the alarm, but it doesn't fix the problem. Captain Erdem's airspeed indicator still shows he's flying much too fast.
Now it's 350, yes?
Confused by the conflicting information, Captain Erdem decides to do what the plane wants. He slows down.
Let's take that like this.
With terrifying results. The 757 is sending out warnings that are confusing the crew. Bewildered, the crew struggles to solve the problem. The lives of 189 people depend on them getting the answer right. Shortly after taking off from the Dominican Republic, Bergenair Flight 301 is in trouble. The cockpit is filled with an ominous sound, the stick shaker alert.
Stick shaker warning is a warning of imminent stall. It means that the airplane is about to attain a speed so low that it cannot sustain flight.
The alert is so serious that it actually shakes the pilot's control columns. Combined with a loud rattling, it's impossible to ignore. To add to the crew's confusion, the plane begins to vibrate and dip wildly.
I'm sure every passenger on the airplane knew something was unusual because the aircraft started to shake in a very violent maneuver.
It's not the only problem the crew is facing.
ABI! The attitude deviation indicator is basically a round gauge that on this airplane is a screen, but it's blue on the top and brown on the bottom, and it shows not only the pitch of the airplane, but also roll.
On the gauge, blue represents sky. The more blue, the steeper the climb. Right now it's showing that the plane's nose is pointing dangerously high. Then, more than 7,000 feet above the ocean, the plane rolls hard to the right and begins to plummet from the sky.
From the time that the stick shaker activates, it is now going to require proper action from the flight crew to sort this out, or they will end up losing control of it. The window of decisions is closing on them, for if they let it stall completely, maintaining control of the airplane will prove to be very difficult.
Captain Erdem struggles desperately to get his plane to climb.
Nose down.
He has just a few thousand feet to pull a 100-ton airliner out of a deadly storm. The less experienced pilots utter prayers and offer suggestions.
Thrust.
ADI. 301, squawk 377.
Stand by.
Air traffic control is still unaware that Flight 301 is in grave danger.
The timing. What am I to do? You can level off. Our altitude's okay.
The plane is falling fast.
Okay, 5,000 feet.
Captain Erdem is trying to fly a plane that's become virtually uncontrollable.
Press levers, press!
Gagin pushes the throttles to full power, but it doesn't help. The plane spirals towards the stern.
What's happening?
Alpha Lima Whiskey 301, Santo Domingo, come in, please. Alpha Lima Whiskey 301, Santo Domingo. Come in, please.
Less than 5 minutes after takeoff, Bergenair Flight 301
Alpha Lima Whiskey
vanishes from
301.
radar.
Come in, please.
The Dominican Navy begins searching for the missing plane and its passengers.
En la ruta me imaginaba siempre que iba lo que me iba a encontrar. Pensaba que iba a encontrar gente gritando, gente llamando.
They discover something very different. The strong smell of jet fuel hangs over the water. Pieces of wreckage float on the waves.
Yo pensé dentro de mí, realmente no hay nadie sobreviviente aquí. No había sobrevivientes. Y no veíamos los cuerpos, pero pensé que el avión se había desintegrado realmente en el agua, con el golpe.
Within hours, more than just wreckage begins floating to the surface.
Hasta ese momento todavía no sentía como a eso de las 5:20 de la mañana, cuando los cuerpos comenzaron a salir. Sí, yo sentí en mi corazón sentí una honda pena realmente. Me sentí que no sabía si iba a sacar fuerza para poder hacer el trabajo en ese momento.
The search continues by the light of the next morning. American and Dominican rescue ships scour a 1,300 square kilometer area for survivors. None are found. Now it's up to the Dominican Republic's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau to find out what caused this accident.
Establecimos campamento en un hotel de la playa Cabarete, que estaba exactamente al sur de la posición del accidente.
Over the next couple of days, investigators, reporters, and some of the victims' families arrive at the hotel. Nearby, evidence of the disaster reaches the Dominican shores. Wreckage and passengers' possessions are washing up on the beach. Even the smallest piece could be a valuable clue as to what caused the crash. The USA's National Transportation Safety Board agrees to assist the Dominicans with their investigation.
del Coro Dominican Republic. I'm Manuel Sufron.
They send an investigator to Puerto Plata.
We could see that this was going to take some international cooperation to get to the bottom of the event.
Robert McIntosh will also provide support from the NTSB's Washington offices.
Any signal from the recorders?
This particular accident was the first major loss of a Boeing 757 in the water. There was added urgency because the aircraft was going into the livery of many American-operated airlines and on the market for the worldwide passenger service.
In order to understand what had happened here, we only had one key. That key was the black boxes.
Like all commercial airliners, the Boeing 757 carries a cockpit voice recorder that records all the sounds in the cockpit, and a flight data recorder that records a wealth of information about the plane's operation during flight.
We've got underwater locator beacons on these recorders. They work for 30 days upon immersion.
But the ocean where the plane crashed is over 7,200 feet deep.
Necesitábamos localizarla antes de que
los
localizadores se apagaran.
And we also
Y luego
needed to remove
necesitábamos
them
sacarla
before
antes
the
de que los
data was
datos se
damaged by
dañaran
salt water.
por efecto
So we
del
were
agua
in
de
a
sal.
race against time.
Entonces estábamos en una carrera contra el tiempo.
The NTSB enlists the help of the US Navy, who hire a submersible called the Curve.
CURV stands for the Cabled Underwater Recovery Vehicle. It's a tethered vehicle. It has an umbilical, and it's controlled by an umbilical. It's not autonomous.
The Curve is essentially a remote-controlled submarine, which can work at depths no manned submarine could handle. While the Curve travels from the United States, Major Souffrant starts to examine the evidence he has. Radar on the ground tracked the plane as it climbed into the night sky.
And then I have the radar. The history of the flight is recorded here. So basically,
investigators study the radar records, along with the conversation between the ground controllers and the crew.
I have the recording from the control tower.
Santo Domingo, good evening. Alpha Lima Whiskey 301, climbing with you.
Alpha Lima Whiskey 301, climb and maintain 280.
Okay, 280.
The exchange between the controller and Flight 301 is normal. The investigators detect no signs of trouble.
Y la última comunicación entre ellos solamente se cortó por un espere un momento.
301, squawk 377.
Stand by. As you heard, there's no reason why this plane went down.
What had caused something to go wrong to interrupt the flight path of the aircraft so rapidly? Certainly, it was a good question for us.
Any debris that's found is taken to a Dominican military base to be examined. Investigators comb through the wreckage they've recovered. Pieces of the cabin, life vests, even part of the landing gear have all been found. Every piece of debris is studied for signs of an explosion or fire. Investigators also check if any of the life vests are inflated. That would suggest passengers had some warning before the plane plowed into the sea. Cords on some of the life vests are hanging loose, but investigators conclude that could be the result of the plane's violent impact. The crash was so powerful, it has compressed coffee cans into flat pieces of tin. The wreckage tells investigators that the crash of Bergenair Flight 301 was sudden and violent. But they find no evidence that there was an explosion on board. Major Souffrant looks into the possibility that the plane, which was called into service at the last minute, may not have been ready for the flight.
Manuel Souffrant.
Hi.
I'd like to see some records of the Bergenair plane.
Oh, they're right here. This is it.
It had been on the ground for some time in Puerto Plata, and that became interesting to us. Why would an operating company have an aircraft sitting there?
Investigators discovered that the plane wasn't on the ground for repairs. Based on maintenance records, the plane appears to have been mechanically sound. Bergenair simply didn't have enough passengers to justify the flight financially. So they kept the plane and the crew in the Dominican Republic for almost 3 weeks. The plane's maintenance records turn out to be one more in a series of empty leads. The Curve arrives in Puerto Plata harbor. On February the 28th, more than 3 weeks after the crash, it slips below the waves, looking for the remains of the Bergenair jet. It takes the robotic submarine 2 hours just to descend the 7,200 feet to the ocean floor. From there, it sends back images of the wreck of Flight 301.
The cockpit pretty much was sitting upright, and it was pretty much the nose of the plane, and you could see the front part of it. It was obviously banged up and cracked and fragmented.
The clues investigators need to solve the mystery of this plane crash lie somewhere amongst the plane's twisted wreckage. The flight's black boxes are the top priority. The Curve quickly picks up the signal from a pinger on one of the units. Operators must now maneuver the sub towards the sound. They have to be able to see the boxes to pick them up with the robotic arm. It takes just 90 minutes to find the first black box.
The first one was sitting out in the open. Okay, it was where they could see it, and they picked the first box up. They grabbed a hold of it, and they just kind of tucked the arm up in place, so that they wouldn't lose it.
The second black box is also heard, but after almost 2 hours, the Curve's cameras still can't see it.
They knew it was right there, and they were searching around a debris pile, and they could not physically see it, with the cameras of the vehicle. So as they went around a couple times, they started, lifting metal up and moving pieces out of the way, and then they did find the second box under some debris.
Flight 301's flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder are brought to the surface and loaded onto a waiting jet. Within hours, the black boxes are at the NTSB labs in Washington, D.C. Technicians prepare to extract the precious data from the boxes. Investigators hope it will tell them what happened aboard Bergenair Flight 301. They'll soon uncover a stunning miscommunication between a seasoned pilot and his plane. To unravel the mystery of Bergenair Flight 301, investigators are counting on the plane's black boxes.
That flight data recorder was our key. So the technicians got busy and gave us plots, visual plots of what was going on with engines and airspeeds and so on, to allow us to try and understand why that aircraft slowed down and then simply departed controlled flight and entered the ocean.
Ah, that's great. That shows us all we need to see for now. So it's all the flight data recording. It's on a timeline. Top is the pitch. We've got the airspeed and the altitude. But check out the timeline, 44.
Investigators immediately notice something unusual about the flight.
15 degrees pitch, nose up. Seems high.
It's almost the maximum.
And then it stays that way.
The plane began climbing normally.
Center autopilot on, please.
But investigators noticed that shortly after the autopilot was switched on, the plane's nose pitched upward. They also see that the plane's airspeed seems much higher than it should be.
350 knots. It can't be right.
Oh, there's definitely something wonky about the airspeed numbers.
This brought us to the question of perhaps we should be looking over on the other side at the cockpit voice recorder and see what kind of information was coming from there.
Can you cue that up and play it?
Investigators soon start filling in the missing pieces of the puzzle.
80 knots?
My airspeed indicator is not working.
They learn that Captain Erdem noticed that his airspeed indicator wasn't working.
Fuse working? Yes, sir.
You tell me.
V1. Rotate.
But Erdem didn't think the problem was serious enough to abort his takeoff. The tape reveals that once they were airborne, the crew quickly became overwhelmed by a series of warnings.
Rudder ratio, Mach airspeed trend, something
to investigators, the captain seems to become increasingly bewildered by the messages he was getting from his plane.
Mine shows only 200 now, and decreasing, sir.
Both of them are wrong. What can we do?
Investigators don't know why the captain's airspeed indicator wasn't working. They do notice that the captain's gauge came back to life as the plane started to climb.
Okay, it's no matter. Let's pull the airspeed. Let's see.
It's a telling discovery, which leads investigators to focus their attention on the device that feeds the gauge's airspeed information. The Pitot tube. A Pitot tube is an airspeed sensor, a pipe open at one end that responds to air pressure. When the plane travels forward, an increase in air pressure inside the Pitot tube causes the airspeed indicator's needle to move.
My airspeed indicator is not working.
But if a Pitot tube becomes blocked, it can send faulty readings to the plane's gauges. Blocked Pitot tubes have been a factor in previous plane crashes. In 1982, a Boeing 737 crashed in heavy snow in Washington, D.C. shortly after takeoff. The Pitot tubes were blocked with ice. Investigators suspect that the Pitot tube which fed the captain's airspeed indicator on the Bergenair jet was somehow blocked. But they know ice can't have blocked the tubes of a plane taking off from a Caribbean island.
We don't know why it was blocked, but it presented a very, very interesting situation to us. We started carefully looking at what could cause that kind of thing to happen.
Senor!
Major Souffrant has a theory. He returns to question the airplane's mechanics.
Senor Souffrant.
We are done with these, thank you. I'd like to ask you some more question about the Bergenair plane.
Souffrant suspects the mechanics may have taped over the Pitot tubes during maintenance. It's a common procedure, but if the tape wasn't removed, it could have caused the deadly accident.
Maybe a piece of tape was left on accidentally?
No, sir. They didn't have to be taped. We never did anything with the Pitos.
Did you put the Pitot covers back on them when the maintenance was finished?
It didn't have any covers with it. We didn't take any off, and we didn't put any on.
Y es ahí donde encontramos que los Pitot nunca estuvieron cubiertos en los 25 días que duró la aeronave en la rampa del Aeropuerto Internacional de Puerto Plata.
A Pitot cover slips over the end of the tube. Regulations state that these covers must be installed any time a plane will be on the ground for an extended period of time. A prominent flag is meant to remind pilots and technicians to remove them again before takeoff. Investigators find that the Bergenair Pitot tubes were never covered, and somehow the uncovered Pitots had become blocked. Recovering the tube from the ocean floor is the only way for investigators to answer a pressing question. What blocked the Pitot tubes?
Nobody knows for sure. The evidence is 7,000 feet down in the Atlantic Ocean.
But even if the pitot tubes were blocked, how could it have caused the crash of a modern jet and the death of 189 people?
It's not like a car where you have only one speedometer. In this kind of an aircraft, you have a total of 3 airspeed indicators, and there's a flight data computer which is computing the velocity in relation to the ground.
I'd like to welcome you all this afternoon. As you know, I'm Bob McIntosh.
Using information from the black boxes, the NTSB pieces together a real-time animation from liftoff to the final moments of Flight 301.
This is the indicator. The captain actually realized that his speed indicator was not working.
Is yours working?
Yes, sir.
The big question for investigators is how could one faulty airspeed source result in a crash?
He realized it at a time when he could have aborted, he could have turned back, but he chose to continue. Right now,
investigators analyze the captain's every move and find that he allowed a small error to escalate and ultimately overwhelm him.
Rotate.
Positive climb, gear up.
Moments after liftoff, Captain Erdem's airspeed indicator appears to be working.
And then that means it's at odds.
But investigators suspect the gauge is responding to changes in altitude.
Climb, thrust.
As the plane climbs through the thinning atmosphere, the air trapped inside the tube expands, causing a buildup of pressure. Inside the cockpit, this causes the airspeed indicator needle to deflect. Even though altitude is causing the increase in pressure, the sensors mistakenly read it as an increase in airspeed.
So at this point, the takeoff is standard, nothing's missed.
Captain Erdem may have had 5 separate sources of airspeed to rely on, but investigators noticed that when the trouble started, he wasn't flying the plane.
Center autopilot on, please.
Center autopilot has command.
Thank you.
The autopilot was. And unless the crew reconfigures it, the autopilot gets its airspeed information from only one source.
Remember, the autopilot gets its data only from the captain's pitot tube, the one that was blocked.
The data shows that the trouble on Bergenair Flight 301 began when the autopilot took over.
Right after the autopilot is engaged, the plane's nose begins to rise.
Investigators suspect that the crew didn't realize that the blocked pitot tube was feeding the autopilot faulty information. The computer registered that the plane was traveling too fast and raised the nose to slow it down.
It soon rises to 15 degrees, then it stays there.
Raising the nose works like an air brake. It slows the plane by creating drag. The autopilot is programmed to never bring the nose higher than about 15 degrees. Any higher, and the plane would slow down too much and stall.
The autopilot's a pretty smart guy. He already knows he's got all the power that he's going to get for the climb. The only thing for the autopilot to do is raise the nose. And it raised the nose of the airplane to its limits of authority.
But the autopilot was reacting to faulty information. Moments later, it sent out 2 different warnings.
Rudder ratio, Mach airspeed trim.
That the plane was traveling too fast to be controlled safely.
And the airplane begins picking up warnings, rudder ratio, a variety of things that the airplane is sensing problems.
Okay, there's something crazy here. Do you see it?
Yes, there is something crazy. Mine shows only 200 now, and decreasing, sir.
Both of them are wrong.
Investigators realized that Captain Erdem wrongly concluded that both airspeed indicators were malfunctioning. In fact, his first officer's gauge was always correct. The plane was traveling much too slowly.
What can we do?
Captain Erdem no longer knows which instruments to trust.
Let's check the circuit breakers.
As they saw these caution lights, they decided they were going to start pulling some circuit breakers. And that would be rather strange.
The actions of trying to reset circuit breakers is something that pilots of older generations aircraft have learned via experience of sometimes being able to get an errant system back functional.
Resetting the circuit breakers turns off the alarm.
But that needle continued to climb around the clock face until it activated the overspeed warning.
The autopilot system sent yet another warning that the plane was traveling too fast. But the reality was just the opposite. The plane was slowing down.
At this point, the overspeed indicator is on. They're going slow, they think they're going too fast, and confusion is set in.
Let's pull the airspeed.
That's when Captain Erdem made the gravest error of all.
You can see that he now pulls back on his throttles.
Investigators realized that at the plane's already slow speed, pulling back on the throttles was disastrous. The crew got the most severe warning that a plane can send out.
And that's when he gets the stick shift.
He's got a tactile sense coming through his flight controls that literally shakes the stick and says, "You've got to lower this nose."
In a matter of seconds, Captain Erdem was first warned that his plane was traveling too fast, and then that it was traveling dangerously slowly.
They're in direct opposition of each other, and two warnings that you would never expect to get one right behind the other.
The autopilot is programmed to always disconnect when the stick shaker activates. It's up to the pilot to get the plane out of a stall.
Once the autopilot reached its limits of authority, it said, "I've done all I can do. I'm out of here."
When the autopilot disengaged, Captain Erdem suddenly found himself in control of the plane at the moment of his greatest confusion.
If you watch the plane at the top of the screen,
the cockpit recordings lead investigators to a stunning conclusion.
ADI!
Captain Erdem may not have recognized that his plane is about to stall, but the relief pilot behind him did.
ADI!
This additional pilot intervened to say, "ADI, ADI." In other words, look at that ADI and put yourself where you would normally see the nose of the aircraft. 5 degrees nose high, 10 degrees.
So when the reserve pilot says ADI, he is attempting to focus the captain's attention to roll and pitch, which are becoming problematic.
The relief pilot wanted Captain Erdem to recognize that the plane's nose was pitched dangerously skyward. Investigators can hear First Officer Gergen trying to convey the same message.
Nose down. At this point, the first officer is actually trying to lead the captain to some solutions, but not actually take control of the airplane.
What the 757 desperately needed was airflow over the wings to generate lift. The only way to get that was to point the nose down and dive. What puzzles investigators is that the first officer had a control column identical to the captain's. He could have pushed it and brought the nose down himself. He may have been able to save the plane. But he didn't. Instead, he and the other Turkish crew member continued offering suggestions to their more experienced but overwhelmed captain.
But climbing, what am I to do? You can level off, our altitude's okay.
The recording shows that Captain Erdem ignored valuable advice that could have saved the plane.
And in the Bergenair case, there's a case of a relatively junior first officer looking at one of the most senior captains on the airline. It is not culturally appropriate for him to say, "I'm going to take the airplane away from you." Instead, he tries to assist the captain, to lead the captain, but leave the captain in command. Other cultures, other training, other airlines may very well have required the first officer to physically take control of the airplane.
I think the social atmosphere in the cockpit will prevail to revere age and experience to the point where it can kill somebody. And in this case, it looks like it did.
The flight data recorder reveals that instead of pushing the nose down, Captain Erdem tried to get more speed from his engines.
At this point, the crew goes to full power.
Thrust levers, thrust!
At the angle the plane was falling, the engines couldn't get enough air. Applying full power was more than they could handle. The left engine quit first.
In a state of utter confusion.
With the right side at full throttle, the airliner swings around as though its left wing were caught on a branch.
The airplane goes into a classic full stall where the nose drops, it falls on a wing, which is now a very life-threatening condition.
The 757 itself makes the situation worse. Like many modern jets, it uses a so-called swept wing design. The wings angle slightly backwards to reduce drag and increase fuel efficiency. But the design has a downside.
One of the characteristics of swept-wing jets is they get less and less stable. They're much harder to fly as they approach stall.
Sir, pull up! What's happening? What's happening?
To maintain control of a swept-wing jet with no more altitude than they had in this condition is very, very problematic, and they are not successful when the airplane goes into the water.
Investigators now know why Bergenair Flight 301 crashed.
Check.
What they can't understand is why the flight ever left the ground.
80 knots. My airspeed indicator's not working.
At 80 knots, if the pilot and co-pilot's instruments disagree, takeoff should be aborted.
V1.
Investigators are troubled that the captain took off knowing he had malfunctioning instruments.
Y si algo no está funcionando
If something is not
correctamente, no
functioning
importa
correctly,
qué,
it doesn't matter
la
what
acción a
it
tomar
is,
es
one should
abortar el
abort the
despegue
takeoff at 80 knots.
en los 80 nudos.
This decision on the part of the captain has been criticized, but there is a very short time window for this decision to be made.
Members of the investigative team in Puerto Plata try to find any clues that might explain why Captain Erdem didn't abort his takeoff. It was raining that night. Perhaps he was worried that he wouldn't be able to stop his speeding plane in time.
Procedurally, he's required to stop, but high-speed aborted takeoffs are something that are very serious, and that flight crews train to avoid high-speed aborted takeoffs if possible.
And we certainly looked at the parameters of the runway to ensure that there was adequate runway in that particular situation.
Careful measurements are taken. Investigators conclude that at 80 knots, when he first noticed the problem, Captain Erdem had enough runway left to bring his plane to a stop. He could have aborted his takeoff. There's also the question of the hastily assembled crew. Investigators now wonder if the last-minute nature of the crew's call could have influenced their decision to take off.
Bergenair started with a crew that probably didn't expect to fly that night. They didn't have adequate rest. They got out to the aircraft and perhaps were rushed in some of their planning.
Investigators consider the possibility that the crew, who had been away from home for more than 2 weeks, was simply too eager to get home.
08301, thank you.
A good flight.
Good flight. Good flight.
Y ahí viene el factor del homesick, la
This is the
enfermedad de
homesick
regreso a
factor,
casa,
where minor
donde
problems are
los
ignored
problemas
in order
menores
to get back
son
home.
obviados para seguir el vuelo y llegar a la casa.
Investigators will never know what was going through Captain Erdem's mind when he opted to continue his takeoff.
In this case, the airplane is accelerating rapidly enough. The first officer responds,
V1.
which is the commit to fly speed, and by training, now the decision window has closed. They need to fly.
Rotate.
And immediately thereafter, they're airborne.
Once the plane was in the air, its blocked pitot tubes caused Captain Erdem to make a series of critical mistakes. But how were the tubes blocked in the first place? Investigators will find that the deaths of 189 people was caused by something the size of a paperclip. Investigators now know that a blocked pitot tube led to a series of conflicting warnings that confounded Flight 301's captain. Now they want to know how those same warnings would affect other pilots.
Fuimos a un simulador de vuelo.
We went to a
Y
flight
en el
simulator,
simulador de vuelo
and in the
tratamos de
simulator, we tried to
recrear
recreate the
la
conditions
misma
of what
situación que
happened
se
on the
dio
night of February 6th,
aquella noche del 6 de febrero de 1996.
Gentlemen, stand by.
The simulator showed investigators that an overspeed warning, followed by a stick shaker warning, caused even the most seasoned pilots to freeze. The contradictory warnings were potentially dangerous.
When the stick shaker activated, it was very unnerving. It's really overwhelming.
That would tell me that Mach airspeed warning horn, combined with a stick shaker, was a tremendously mind-boggling experience to a line pilot.
As a result, the FAA issues a directive that simulator training for all airline pilots must include a blocked pitot tube scenario.
The flight crew within Bergenair was faced with a large number of warnings that kept coming, and each warning added complexity to the environment. There's a lot of warning lights going off. This captain is in a condition that is deteriorating now very rapidly. So there is a dramatically increased demand on the captain to fly the airplane.
The FAA asks Boeing to change some of those warnings. Those changes include the addition of a new warning, which tells both pilots that their instruments disagree, and the ability for pilots to more easily silence troublesome alarms. Finally, Boeing modifies its planes so that pilots can easily choose which pitot tube the autopilot is using for airspeed readings. All told, more than 1,400 Boeing planes worldwide are affected by the new directives. One final question remains. What had blocked the plane's pitot tubes? Investigators conduct an extensive search for Bergenair Flight 301's pitot tubes. They are never found. But at Puerto Plata's airport, they don't have to look far to find the likeliest suspect. It's not ice, and it's not dirt.
We know that the area around Puerto Plata has a lot of bees and wasps and animals and birds and insects that like to build nests.
One of the insects is well known to pilots flying out of the Dominican Republic. It's called the mud dauber wasp. Bug experts tell investigators about an extraordinary connection between the wasps and a pitot tube.
Cuando la avispa albañilera está buscando un área para construir su nido,
when a mud dauber is looking for an area to build its nest, it's looking for a site, a place that's more or less
más o menos que tenga algo tubular. Cuando las avispas albañileras construyen sus nidos de barro, el barro cuando se seca o la arcilla se endurece y se compacta, es dura.
Mud dauber wasps are squatters that make their nests in available places, like crevices in homes, or even the pitot tubes of planes.
La razón del que el avión estuviera tanto día parado en el aeropuerto, 25 días, es suficiente tiempo para cualquier especie de las avispas albañileras construir su nido en los pitot tubes.
Investigators can only conclude that mud dauber wasps blocked the uncovered pitot tubes that fed the captain's airspeed indicator, which caused it to malfunction.
They didn't put covers on the pitot tubes. So at some point in time, extended time, there was an opportunity to get something like a mud dauber in that pitot tube.
Investigators have their answer. On February the 6th, 1996, a tiny insect led to a series of mistakes that brought down an airplane and changed the design of the world's most successful series of airliners.